Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Caroline walked up the stairs, barely moving her feet. She didn't want to go home. The woman was resentfully silent. Her husband also silently followed her. Caroline kept mentally returning to the meeting with her partners, remembering in what unfavorable light her husband made her look. "Come in." The woman welcomed the two men to the negotiating table. "The agreement on the beginning of our cooperation will come into force today. I have prepared all the necessary documents. We only need to sign them." She, smiling, put a folder in front of each of them. "Look through them carefully. I tried to take into account all your wishes." The men looked at each other. "We don't really understand." One of them spoke up. "Why did you invite us here today? We have nothing more to say to you. All matters have already been settled with your husband. You referred us to him yourself?" "Of course." Patiently, Caroline explained, "I was counting on Hunter to familiarize you with the terms. I think you found them very attractive. This contract is important to our firm, especially to me. After all, I've been working to promote this deal. I don't think there's any impediment to signing. If there are any points that need to be clarified, suggest it. It's not too late to tweak things. Hunter." She turned to her husband, who had been sitting there all this time, saying nothing and pretending that the matter did not concern him. "Why are you silent? We will not sign this contract." Without looking his wife in the eyes and visibly nervous, the man replied sharply, "How not to sign?" Caroline was confused. "Wait, but we had a preliminary agreement. You only had to clarify the details of the deal and agree on the time of signing. What's the problem? I have everything prepared, no contradictions. The deal is transparent. I decided that the terms offered to us by potential partners were not favorable to our firm. Why sign a contract if it's unpromising from the start? Why would we invest in a business that's not profitable for us? Gentlemen," one of the men addressed them, "you please agree among yourselves. We would not like to be participants in your family quarrel. I think it's pretty clear. For God's sake, I'm sorry." Caroline addressed them. "There's been a misunderstanding. Let's postpone the signing of the contract, say, for 2 days. I'll prepare a new set of documents, and we'll start working together. My husband and I probably misunderstood each other, but these days of misunderstanding, I'm afraid it won't work." Shook his head one of the representatives. "We have found other companions. My advice to you," rising from his chair, he said, "before inviting partners, you should be able to negotiate among yourselves, or you have a right hand does not know what the left hand does. This attitude is bad for business development. Permission to deviate." The men have left the meeting room. "What was that all about?" Caroline asked, seething. "Why would you do such a thing? Especially behind my back. What right did you have to back out of the deal? Why on earth would you think it was unprofitable? We started working on it a month ago. We were both hoping for a good investment. And now what? All that effort for nothing? I don't want to talk right now." Hunter headed for the exit. "You are annoyed and will not take my arguments properly." "All right," Caroline agreed. "Let's go home. It's really not a good idea to deal with serious matters at the end of the day. But you're not going to be able to keep your mouth shut. I want to know why you changed your mind about the deal." The woman stopped in front of the door to the apartment. Hunter turned the key in the lock. Caroline gladly threw off her business clothes, changed into a house robe, went into the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of water. "We need to talk." Her husband's tone made the woman wary. "Let's not today." She wrinkled her nose. She didn't feel like talking. "You've already said and done a lot of things. Let's save the explanations for tomorrow." The deal is off anyway, so I think we can talk until morning, and tomorrow I'll calculate how much money we've lost by losing our suppliers. I don't have the energy for this anymore. I want to sleep. My business cannot wait. Hunter insisted. You'll have to listen to me now. Do you want to explain why you embarrassed me in front of potential partners? Caroline squinted at her husband. Go ahead, say it. But don't use the fact that I'm a woman and don't know anything about business as an argument. I don't think you've ever had to question my abilities until recently. I know what our firm needs. You can't dismiss my opinion. I'm not going to explain or apologize. I've made up my mind. That's how you talk. Not so long ago, you couldn't make a move without me. What's changed? Why didn't you talk to me beforehand? Why didn't you tell me you weren't going to make a contract with the buyers? Is that how it's done? Don't you realize you're ruining my reputation and the reputation of the firm? I just haven't had time to tell you. I've had too many problems these past few days. You didn't have time or you didn't want to. Is that what they call it now? How could you not consult me? What kind of demarque is this? We discussed all the details together a week before we signed the contract. What happened in the meantime? Why do I have to justify myself to you? Hunter was angry. I got acquainted with the material offered by these suppliers and realized that they were not suitable. That's why I decided not to cooperate with them. It's business. We will find other, more favorable suppliers. Don't make excuses. You and I are partners, which means I need to know what's going on in the firm. You made me look like a shallow, flighty person who suddenly wanted to take charge, and it was my initiative. When we started the business, you always consulted me. We made every decision together, weighed all the pros and cons of the deal, calculated every step to avoid making mistakes, and succeeded together, which is important. And what do I see today? Why did you allow yourself to put me in such an unpleasant situation? Why go behind my back and change your mind? I feel like an idiot, because there's no changing your mind once you've made up your mind. This deal is a zero-sum deal, and it's a mess. I cared about the firm, not your reputation. You should have talked about it beforehand. So you don't trust me. You doubt my abilities. But since the firm was founded, there hasn't been a single wrong decision I've made. Why are you questioning my competence now? Caroline looked at her husband and could not understand at what point they began to drift apart. She remembered one of the conversations she had had with her mother when they were just about to start their own business. Mom, Hunter, and I have decided to start our own firm. Can you imagine how great that would be? Good, of course, who can argue? Mother said cautiously. But who are you going to register it with? Hunter, of course. He's a man, but we'll invest the money equally. Remember, daughter. Her mother looked at her as if she were an unwise child. You can't put your eggs in one basket. If anything happens between you, God forbid, the firm will go to your husband and you'll be left with nothing. What's going to happen? Caroline hugged her mother. Mommy, Hunter, and I love each other, and we're not getting divorced. If that's what you're implying. Who knows, who knows? Mother answered evasively. Life? Oh, how unpredictable. Well, if you're so worried about me, we can become full partners. That's better, but I think you should have your own business, opened only with your money. A married couple's business together can sometimes lead to strife. Men think we women are incapable of making good decisions. If they had their way, they would not allow us to work at all, but limit our power to the kitchen, the house. My Hunter is not like that. Caroline assured her. They're all the same. Heavy, sighed the mother. Mommy, you're wrong about my husband. He trusts me and always consults me. I'm better at some things than he is. We have nothing to share. I wouldn't be so reckless if I were you, but that's your business." And now Caroline realized what her mother had warned her about, and she wouldn't listen. That's not what I was going to talk about. Her husband brought her out of her reverie. "I'd love a hot bath right now." At that thought, Caroline even closed her eyes. It seemed the day would never end. Her resentment towards her husband was unrelenting. What other unpleasant things was he going to tell me? About what? She looked at him tensely. "Tomorrow, a lot of things are going to change in our lives." "What changes?" "Don't speak in riddles. I want to warn you in advance so that the news doesn't come as a sudden blow to you." "What the hell is going on? Why are you going around and around?" "You're a smart woman." Hunter began in a sneaky way. "So I'm sure you figured it out a long time ago. I have someone else, and for quite some time." Caroline was silent. "I hope you're not going to make a jealous scene. We're adults, and we know how it is sometimes when a husband and wife break up." "I suspected, of course, that you had someone else." Caroline spoke with difficulty, overcome with heartache. Her feminine ego was hurt. She was not ready for such a conversation. But I pushed the thought away. "I really hoped that you'd come to your senses, that you'd have a good time, but you'd stay in the family. I can understand you. They say all men cheat on their wives at least once in their lives. Let's consider it a misunderstanding that we should forget, okay?" She smiled, though inside her, a fire was burning, her heart was bleeding. She wanted to get up and hit her husband. "I was fine with life with you," Hunter continued, glancing at his wife. "I wasn't planning to leave, but—" He paused. "A few months ago, Kathy bore me in hair, a son, and you couldn't do it. We'd been dreaming of a child for years, and we'd never been able to do it. And she did. I want to be with her and raise my son. And you know how important that is to me. I hope we'll part peacefully." Caroline closed her eyes. "Her husband was hitting me where it hurts. I thought we were both okay with this situation. You and I have been together for 10 years, and we agreed long ago that the topic of children for us closed forever. There's a lot more to us than a child. We have so much in common. Don't those years mean anything to you? You're just going to ruin our family?" "Remember," Hunter grumbled, "that we've been together since college. We have. We fell in love at first sight. Don't you remember how we met? Anyone in my position would have lost their head to a handsome guy with a guitar in his hands. After that, I couldn't imagine life without you. We did everything together. When we got married, we started a business together. Do you remember how we bought our first apartment?" Hunter was silent. Caroline could see how unpleasant this conversation was for him. "And how you dreamed of a car, remember? And we'd bought it. We picked it out together. Our next purchase was a big apartment where we wanted to have a nursery, but we didn't have children. And now you want to destroy everything for the sake of a Flynn? Think carefully, Hunter. We've known each other a long time, and that woman you're just getting to know. Are you sure about her? You shouldn't be reminiscing right now. Nothing will change. I've already made up my mind. What kind of man am I if I don't have an heir? If I can't proudly say that the family business will go to my son? I need that child. He hesitated. And his mother. Our feelings for you have long since faded, and I want something new. That's what I understand. Caroline said slowly, I can't change your mind, can I? Do you want to go to that woman? Well, that's your right. No. Hunter paced nervously in the kitchen. I want you to go. Go where? I don't understand. His wife looked at him puzzled. What don't you understand? He asked angrily. I have a son and hair. We need this apartment. Where will I bring a new family in rented accommodation? How do you envision it? No, tomorrow Kathy and my son are moving here, into my apartment. Wait a minute. Caroline's head is spinning at her husband's insolence. It's not just your apartment, it's ours. We bought it together in equal shares. If you want to live with your mistress, be my guest, I won't keep you. You want a divorce? That's fine. I won't beg you to come back, but everything has to be fair. We have a lot of property that we acquired during our marriage. Legally, I own half of it. I'm not going to give it to your new woman. I'm not a charity. In principle, I'm willing to give you the apartment, but then pay me half of what it's worth. And of course, tomorrow, no more Kathy, much less your child, will be here. Not until I find a new place to live. Besides, I need time to pack. By the way, how are we going to divide the firm? Caroline? Hunter looked hard at his wife. You still don't get it, do you? I'm not going to share anything with you. The firm is in my name. Wrong. The business is shared. Any court would make you pay me half of what you sold it for. And you can't rob me. If you don't want to split it amicably, we'll sue. The apartment, unfortunately, without paying attention to her, continued the husband. It's registered to both of us, but I'm sure I can take it away. You don't need anything. You're single. You have money. What am I supposed to do? Start all over again? My new family can't wait. The money to support them is needed here and now. So I'm sorry, honey. I'm gonna have to give in. You can't do this to me. I'll fight for my share of the estate. For God's sake. Her husband laughed nervously. Only you won't succeed. Get over it. I don't want you in this house or in my life anymore. You're fired on all counts. I've written you off as old age, as waste material. He laughed again. And Kathy tomorrow. He suddenly got serious. She'll move in here as mistress, and you can't stop her from doing it. No one's going to kick a mother and child out of the door, and I won't let them. All right, I'll leave, but I'll get my stuff later when I get an apartment. Caroline saw that it was useless to argue with her husband. He is stronger and probably prepared for the conversation in advance, all calculated and thought out. So she decided to agree with him in everything, just to avoid making him angry. I can't do it now. You realize I need time. You have all night. Relax, Hunter. If you don't pick up your stuff tomorrow, I'll just throw it out to make room for Kathy and change the locks on the apartments so you can't come in unimpeded. That's all. Good night, darling. By the way, I've already filed for divorce. With these words, the man left the kitchen. Caroline looked after her husband in shock. Is this really the Hunter I loved? She thought, tears welling up in her eyes. No, this is a complete stranger. It turns out I didn't know my husband at all. What am I going to do? She was aimlessly writing patterns on the table with a teaspoon. I'm certainly not going to leave you pantsless. I'm going to legally take what's mine. Good. The woman put the documents in a folder. Anything else I wanted to bring? She closed the safe, looked around. These antiques I bought for myself. I don't think Hunter's new girlfriend will appreciate them. Caroline put in her bag a miniature brass coffee maker, a coffee mill, a vintage jewelry box. Let the rest stay. She packed some expensive dishes, wrapped some paintings in cloth. What am I supposed to do with all this? The woman looked thoughtfully at the things she had packed. Perhaps it would be better to take it to the car, she reasoned. I don't know if Hunter will like my choice. She grinned sadly. Hopefully, reason will prevail and we won't have to share forks, spoons, and chairs. Trying not to attract the attention of the neighbors, I carried the packed things into the car. Now it was just a matter of packing my personal belongings. Gloating at the clock, the woman opened the bedroom door and turned on the light. "What are you doing?" shrieked the disgruntled husband, waking up. Sat up in bed, wiped his eyes, glanced at the clock. "Are you crazy? The time is 3 o'clock in the morning. Why did you turn on the light? What do you want here?" "I have to work tomorrow." "Everyone has to work tomorrow, and I'm doing your bidding, darling." Caroline replied nonchalantly. She spread 2 large suitcases on the floor and opened the closet doors. "You told me you'd throw my things away if I didn't pack them by morning. I can't lose my favorite dresses and suits. I'm sorry, you didn't give me any other time." "Couldn't you have waited until morning?" Hunter said irritably, tucking himself back under the blanket. "I won't get any sleep, and tomorrow's a busy day." "Get used to it, dear," the woman said with a sneer. "You will have many sleepless nights ahead of you. Don't forget, you'll soon have a small child living here. You can't imagine the difficulties ahead of you." "I can't wait." She waved her hands. "What if your new wife wants to move in early? So I'm sorry, you left me no choice." "Okay, but can you get ready quickly?" Hunter asked unhappily, seeing Caroline slowly packing her things into her suitcase. "What are you doing?" "Don't rush me. I mustn't forget anything." Smiling to herself, the woman shrugged her shoulders. "For 10 years of happy married life, I have accumulated a lot of things. With what love you bought for me, jewelry, outfits, remember." Finally, the suitcases were packed. Caroline carried them into the car. She looked at her watch and decided, "I could use some sleep, even an hour of shutting my eyes. It would be easier on my head." The woman settled down on the sofa in the living room and tried to sleep, but she was disturbed by the unpleasant conversation with her husband and the collection of things. Sleep did not come. She waited until dawn in a half-slumber, then quickly jumped to her feet, cleaned herself up, and went to work to pick up the documents for the company from her husband's office before the workday began. Caroline, as usual, smiled at the security guard at the entrance. "Good morning, Bob. I thought I'd get an early start to the day. Have you been eating a lot of bleach?" She was surprised when the guard blocked the entrance. "Let me through." "Caroline." The guard was guiltily hiding his eyes. "I can't. Hunter, strictly forbidden to let you into the office. I'm very nice to you, but the boss has threatened to fire you." "I can't lose my job." "I'm sorry, I have a mother and a wife and child on my back. If I lose my job, we'll go to the world. I need you to understand my situation. Bob." She gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Don't worry, please. I'm hurt, of course, but okay, I won't set you up." "Thank you, Caroline." The guy's blushing. "I'm sorry." "Never mind." The woman tried to smile, though she really wanted to cry. "It's our family squabbles. I owe you an apology for being caught between 2 fires. I'm not mad at you. And Hunter is not so stupid," she thought as she walked out of the building. "He made sure I couldn't get into the office in advance. He knew I'd want to get the files. I'm not going to fight with the guard. He's just an enforcer. I don't want to give Hunter an excuse to call the police. I'd rather come back next time, when things have calmed down a bit, talk to Bob. They'll let me through. He's a good guy, and he understands. I picked a bad time, of course. The guy's afraid the chief's gonna show up any minute. That's why he's acting like this. We should come by at the end of the day. We do not have cameras installed, so we can try to negotiate." With those thoughts, the woman got in the car. "Well, we'll have to find a lawyer. We can't do it alone." Caroline said, flipping through the phone book. "As far as I remember, this man is considered the best in civil cases. He doesn't seem to have a single lost case, but his services won't be cheap." She looked around, started the car. "Good thing Hunter doesn't have access to my accounts. I'll pay any money to help solve the property division problem." Well, I'll try calling. I hope he has time for me. Caroline dialed the number for the law firm. Hello. She spoke when she heard a pleasant female voice on the other end of the line. I urgently need to meet your boss. When can he see me? You know, there was some silence on the phone. There's a window in his schedule right now. Can you come over right now? Great, the woman rejoiced. I'm on my way. You're very lucky, the secretary said as Caroline entered the reception area. Samuel has a canceled appointment and will see you personally. She stood up quickly and opened the door. Samuel, the girl announced, you have a visitor. Hello, come in. A handsome middle-aged man, his dark hair neatly trimmed, barely raised his head and deep into his papers again. Dressed neatly, clean-shaven and smelling of expensive perfume, he immediately made a favorable impression on Caroline. Excuse me, I'll be ready to hear from you in a minute. I have a lot of things to do in production. Caroline sat down on a comfortable chair, put her purse on the neighboring one, folded her hands on a good dark wood table, and looked around. There was order in the office, nothing superfluous folders, books, stationery on the desk. Everything was in harmony with the environment and incredibly appropriate to the owner of the office. Am I listening to you? Finally, the lawyer said, raising his brown eyes to her. The case will seem trivial at first glance. Caroline began, slightly worried, but I found myself in a very unpleasant situation. It was inexpressibly embarrassing to admit to such a handsome young man that her husband had left her, but she gathered her strength and spoke. My husband and I have been together for 10 years. We started from scratch together. The only thing that marred our family life, the lack of children, well, did not happen. And now a young fool has seduced my husband, and he threw me out on the street. You want your husband back? The man squinted at her. No, I don't. We are civilized people. We parted peacefully, without breaking dishes and mutual insults. If he thinks they'll be better off with a new wife, for God's sake, I'm not going to interfere. It is noble, though unexpected to hear such a statement from the mouth of a woman. The lawyer hummed respectfully. I see, you decided to take revenge on him, to punish him, to leave him with nothing? I don't need to get my husband back. I don't need to rip him off. I just want what's legally mine. We acquired all of our property after we were married. So one half is mine, right? Here are the documents. You can read them. She put a folder on the table in front of him. I don't need anything extra, just what goes to me in the divorce. By the way, my husband filed for divorce without me. Samuel was silent for a long time, looking at the woman curiously. Caroline couldn't take it anymore. What? She asked, feeling uncomfortable under his gaze. Is something wrong? Why don't you say anything? Are you taking my case? I'm sorry. Samuel grinned and began to study the documents. After a while, he stared at her again. Caroline shivered, not understanding why he was staring at her like that. If you have any questions, ask. I have nothing to hide. I don't want blood. Yes, I'm hurt that my husband did this to me, but I don't want to hurt him. He's probably right. Our relationship is over. We lived together out of inertia, the habit of being close to each other. If you know what I'm talking about, he was probably the first to realize the pointlessness of our relationship. I'm even grateful to him in a way. It's just, she hesitated. The breakup came out of the blue. To be honest, Samuel said slowly, continuing to stare at her. I was expecting to see another trophy wife, eager to steal from an unfaithful husband, young, beautiful, and completely stupid. And here, I'm a little puzzled. You're different. I don't know what you mean. The woman frowned. And stop looking at me. Are you taking my case? If you're interested in details, ask. I'll answer any questions you have. I don't have any questions for you. Everything is clear. Rather, there are questions for your husband, except that he is a fool to let such a woman go. Caroline blushed and looked away. I can't understand at all what he's counting on. The apartment was bought during the marriage. It's jointly owned. I've looked through the documents. Everything is clean. The firm is also very clear. We have to split it up. I don't know what he's counting on. Excuse me, Caroline, can I ask you a personal question? Of course, she nodded. And the money, how do you plan to divide your capital? You haven't said anything about it. We've never shared a budget, so I have my money. The car is in my name too. I don't have a claim on the Hunter. I'm interested in the apartment, the firm, and the summer house. I'll be honest, your cases are easy to win. I will be pleased if you decide to work with me, but with such a case will cope with any lawyer, including the one who charges for his services much less than me. You've already asked about my rates, haven't you? Maybe you should go to another law firm. I don't discount my clients, not even pretty ones like you. You see, Samuel, my husband is no fool. Ignoring his compliment, Caroline spoke. This morning I tried to get into the office, but they wouldn't let me in. He strictly forbade the guards to even speak to me, threatening to fire me. I could have demanded permission to go in, but I didn't want to put the guard in an awkward position, and Hunter's just waiting for an excuse to take me down. I'm sure he has some kind of plan. I'm afraid he's going to forge documents related to the firm. I suspect he's already slipped me some papers, and I may have signed them without looking. Don't you check the papers you sign? I've never had any reason not to trust him. We've been working together a long time. We have a family and a business in common, and we both have a vested interest in its success. The woman fell silent, trying to cope with the tears that came to her throat. I can't confirm my guesses either. I don't have access to the office right now. The case, seemingly simple at first glance to you, can turn into a huge showdown, and I would not like that. I'm a peaceful person, used to negotiating, so I'm afraid to be cowardly and back down. Hunter will probably try to take advantage and push pity on me. And I want to get justice and get what's mine in the divorce. Judging by the reviews, have you ever won the toughest case? If I'm gonna go to war with my husband, it's gonna have to be with you. That's why I came to you. Don't worry about the fee. I have the money. You set a price and let's sign the contract. Caroline, I understand your husband asked you to vacate the apartment. Did you get your things out of there? Yes, I took my things. They're in my car. Where do you plan to live? Have you already managed to rent a place to live, or have any of your relatives or acquaintances taken you in for a while? Honestly, I didn't even think about it. The woman was embarrassed. But it doesn't matter. I'll try to go home, maybe. Hunter has already decided not to kick me out of my own apartment. He must have a conscience. Caroline replied, but if he's determined, he'll probably carry out the threat and change the locks. I can't get into the apartment, but that's not a good idea. It's already occupied. I don't want to get into a fight in front of the neighbors. I'll have to find a place to sleep. I'll think of something. Don't you want to go to the police? He'll be obliged to give you back your right to stay in this apartment in no time. Come home with the police and demand to be let in? I don't want to. It's beneath me. It's easier for me to rent. It's not a problem if you have the money. Okay. Samuel put a form and a pen in front of Caroline. Now we'll draw up an application to the court demanding the division of property. Then we'll draw up a partnership agreement between you and me. And I will not put things on hold, and I will study your documents right away. I'll do that. The woman started filling out the paperwork. I also want this to be resolved as soon as possible." "Okay." Taking the written sheets from her, the man resolutely held out his keys. "And these are for you." "What's this?" She looked at him uncomprehendingly. "These are the keys to my second apartment. Usually friends, colleagues, or my most pleasant clients stay there. Right now the apartment is empty. You can stay there temporarily. I'll write you the address." "No, no." Caroline objected. "I can't. I don't want to bother you. I don't want to be obliged." "Don't refuse." Samuel stopped her with a gesture. "You have a difficult time ahead of you. Let at least one of your problems be solved easily. I really don't need this apartment yet. You can live in it as long as you like until you feel you need to move out." "But I'm not comfortable." "Look, we're partners now. I'm supposed to help you." "Don't say no. I can see that you're very tired and need to rest. You'll find another apartment, but it'll take time. For now, go, take a bath, calm down. Get your mind right. There's no food, you can order something by courier, but there's wine at the bar. If you want something stronger, there's cognac. Don't be shy. Make yourself at home. I really don't feel comfortable burdening you. I'm used to taking care of myself." Caroline felt like she was about to cry. A stranger showed concern for her, and her husband, with whom she had lived for almost 10 years, threw her out of the house like a stray puppy. "Please stop apologizing and go." The lawyer quickly wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to her. "Here's the address. I'll call you as soon as I get the paperwork to the court to make it easier for you to accept my help. Remember, if you're paying for my work, the apartment is part of the terms of the deal. A nice bonus for hiring me. Are you willing to do that?" "Thank you. You're very kind to me. I can't even remember the last time a man was so attentive. I'm used to being strong, and I'm used to protecting the weak, though not without benefit to myself." Samuel smiled slyly. The woman smiled back, tears glistening in her eyes. "Go and think nothing of it. The truth is on your side. Build up your strength. You'll need a lot of it to endure the legal battle. It's an unpleasant and sometimes quite painful procedure. I've seen it, so I know what I'm talking about. You must present yourself to your husband as a strong, beautiful, confident woman. You can't let it show that this situation has knocked you off your game, that it's interfering with your life." "Yeah, I get it. I mustn't get discouraged. Thanks again." Caroline left the office, got into her car. She felt completely exhausted. "Don't relax," she ordered herself. "Now I'll get to the apartment my lawyer has kindly given me, and I'll rest there. He's right. I could definitely use a rest right now." "What an apartment!" she exclaimed, half an hour later, entering her new home. "It's gorgeous." She looked into the bedroom, into the kitchen. "I'm going to order some food from the restaurant, and I'm going to take a bath. I want to rinse off all my troubles as soon as possible." She made the phone call, hummed contentedly when she heard that the order would be fulfilled within half an hour, and headed for the bathroom. She was almost dozing off, relaxing in the hot water, when the doorbell rang. Oops! She quickly jumped up, hastily wiped herself down, wrapped her hair in a towel, threw on a robe, and opened the door. A young man in a uniform smiled at her. "Your order." "Thank you." Taking the packages, Caroline replied. After seeing the young man off, she went into the kitchen. It turned out that I was hungry. She was surprised to find herself eating a salad. The meat is so tender. I have to stop. Caroline got up from the table and went into the bedroom. "This is what I've been missing," she said with pleasure, stretching out from under the blanket. The woman had no sooner closed her eyes than fatigue and worry took their toll, and she fell into a dream. Caroline did not know how many hours she had slept, but when she opened her eyes, she realized that it was already evening. It was dusk outside the window. It felt so good. She stretched and said she would lie here without any problems and worries. Oh, it's evening. I slept through everything. Enough lying around. She jumped to her feet. I should go home, see what's going on. Maybe I shouldn't have done all this. Maybe Hunter's not thinking about getting rid of me. I mean, it's a little crazy in his head. I mean, who knows? I won't judge him if he wants to apologize. We have too much in common. She cleaned herself up, got into the car, and drove home. She stopped at the entrance, looked up, noticed the light in the windows. She went up to the landing, tried to insert the key into the keyhole as usual, but it didn't work. It had changed after all. There was an unpleasant scratching at her soul. Caroline gathered her courage and rang the bell. She stood listening. Strange, the light was on, so someone must be home. There was silence at the door. She knocked gently at first, then insistently. No one answered. Then Caroline began to ring again. Finally, the door opened. A young woman appeared on the threshold. Her blonde hair was loose, her lipstick was brightly colored, and long, unnaturally fluffy eyelashes framed her brown eyes. The makeup disfigured her delicate face rather than adding beauty. A silk robe barely covered her slender legs. What do you want? Despite her fragile appearance, the stranger's voice was rough, displeased. She smokes, too. Caroline's mind flashed. Didn't anyone ever tell you that if people don't answer the door, they don't want to see anyone? And you calling and waking up my kid, who are you? Hello, I want to see Hunter. Send him in. Trying to remain calm, Caroline asked politely. Aha, a stranger's guess. You're Hunter's ex. He's not here, and I don't know when he will be. Kathy tried to close the door. I don't think he'll want to talk to you anyway. I think you've got it all figured out. Then I'll wait for him. I need to talk to him. You can't stop me. Caroline held the door. Let me into the apartment. In case you didn't know, half of it is mine. I have every right to be in it. You have no business being here. Kathy pulled on the door again. Hunter said you're not getting anything out of this apartment. Now, this is my house. I decide who I let in here. Okay, I'm sorry. I overreacted. Caroline tried to smooth things over. Tell me when he's coming back and I'll leave. I don't know when Hunter's coming back. You're not going to stay here all night, are you? Go away or you'll really wake up your son. If you don't leave me alone, I'll tell Hunter and he'll deal with you. Don't think you're going to get my sympathy. I know my rights. You're the one who's screaming like a victim right now. Caroline said calmly, so you don't have to put your head on straight. It won't be long before all the neighbors will come to see us fighting. You don't want the neighbors to know we're fighting, do you? I don't care about the neighbors. Get out. I don't have time to talk to you. My husband will be home from work. I have to get ready. He's so insatiable in bed. Kathy laughed. How would you know, though? The passion between you two is long gone. Hunter complained that you didn't satisfy him at all. Let's not discuss our bedtime affairs, shall we? Caroline blushed. I'll go. Just help me satisfy my feminine curiosity. She looked questioningly at her rival. Don't worry, I'm not going to interfere with your happiness. Just answer one question. Okay, ask. The hell with you. Anyway, after all, do not get off. How old is your son? 8 months old. Kathy answered. What's your business? She looked suspiciously at the uninvited guest. Are you up to something? It's not going to work, okay? Hunter stays with me. Forget about him. How can you compete with me? I'm young and beautiful, and you're already used up. Sure, I get it. Calm down. I'm not going to interfere with my ex-husband's new marital happiness. If you'll excuse me, I have one more question. Why are you two getting married now? Not right after your son was born, but only 8 months later? What were you waiting for? Don't you get it? I love Hunter, so I didn't want to pressure him. He couldn't make up his mind to talk to you. Do you have any idea what it's cost me to wait? But why rush things? I'm not a beast. I gave him time to gather his strength. I knew he wouldn't go anywhere. He'd marry me sooner or later. Look at yourself from the outside, and you'll understand why Hunter chose me. Admit it, you decided to push him a little bit, blackmail him, scare him that you'd leave him, didn't you? Cut him off from your son, am I right? That's your style. So what? Yeah, I gave you an ultimatum. I move out of your apartment by the end of the week, or I move back in with my mom. I'd had enough of the movie house, but then he'd never see his son again, and what was I supposed to do? I'm sick of it. I need certainty, and my son a father, and I was also afraid that he was scared and change his mind about divorcing you. After all, after 10 years, people get to know each other, and your tricks worked on him right away. He got all excited and made concessions to you right away. Well, you see, you know all about it. Kathy grinned. You've already asked more than 2 questions. I don't have time to talk to you. Get out of here if you don't want to get in trouble, and you will when Hunter gets here. Why are you so nervous? Caroline let go of the door and headed for the elevator with a parting glance. I get the impression that you're not very confident about tomorrow. You see, it's long been proven that once betrayed again. I'd think about it if I were you. One day Hunter will see not only your body, but your soul as well. I'm sure he won't like it. Don't scare me, I'm scary. Forget the way here, shouted Kathy to Caroline's back. You don't have a husband anymore. He's mine and mine alone. It's your own fault. You should have had a child. Then he wouldn't look at any woman, and you couldn't. So I'm sorry, move over. What can you do? There aren't enough rich men for everyone. But you two, as far as I know, you didn't miss a beat. And I can keep him. Don't worry about that. The woman was awakened by the phone ringing. Caroline? She heard Samuel's voice on the phone. I've filed the papers with the court. The first hearing is scheduled for next week. Thank you. In a voice hoarse from sleep, the woman spoke. Hunter, the subpoena has been sent. Be prepared for all sorts of surprises and even provocations. Not at all, she smiled. Hunter is not capable of that. I wouldn't be so sure. He betrayed you. A man who has tried to take away a piece of property will do anything to defend it. He's got something to fight for. I don't think he'd make such draconian terms himself. This shows the hand of the mistress. I spoke to her. Why? So you can piss Hunter off and complicate the property division process. I hadn't thought of that, but he didn't call with a claim. Maybe Kathy didn't tell him I was coming. We'll see, but we can't relax. The week went by without a hitch. Caroline showed up at the courthouse. Don't worry. Samuel took her hand reassuringly. You have nothing to worry about. Now the court will hear the parties and make a decision. I don't understand. Why isn't Hunter here? Caroline was nervous. We have a few minutes. Stand up. Court is now in session. The clerk announced, and the judge entered the courtroom with a decisive step. The court is adjourned due to the defendant's failure to appear. She announced, What does that mean? Perplexed, Caroline asked the lawyer. It means that your husband decided to delay the process, but it's not a problem. He still has nowhere to go, whether he wants to or not, and have to share. It's just gonna take longer. What am I supposed to do? The woman looked at Samuel frustrated. All you can do is wait. You have a place to live. You don't need money, so rest. As they say, there's a silver lining. When else is there gonna be a good time when you don't have to think about work? Do you remember the last time you went on vacation? We were planning to go somewhere with Hunter. Caroline smiled sadly. We travel every year together, and now, that's great, Samuel exclaimed, encouragingly looking at her. Go away, get a change of scenery. It will do you good, at least for a couple of days. I wish it were over as soon as possible. I'm very uncomfortable with you, Samuel. I've overstayed my welcome. You've given me a temporary home, but it's dragging on. Caroline, what are you talking about? Wouldn't you help me if I were in this situation? You're not just a client to me anymore. You've become a real friend to me. The man looked intently into the woman's eyes. She was embarrassed and looked away. Don't think about anything. We have everything under control. Have you decided where you're going? Yes, I'm going to a friend's country house. That's great. Take a rest and don't think about anything. Remember, I'm in charge of your problems now, and Caroline went to the country. The weekend flew by, but the woman really felt that she was ready to continue to stand up for her rights. And even from a distance, she felt Samuel's support. A week later, she walked back into the courtroom. Hunter is here, Samuel reported, and in good spirits. I would like to believe that today's meeting will be the end of it. Hunter entered the room, accompanied by his lawyer. The judge has taken her seat. Court is now in session. The clerk announced, a civil case on the division of the property of the spouses is being heard. The plaintiff's lawyer voiced his demands. Hunter, I would like to hear what you do not agree with the position of the applicant. Judging by the documents, the property was acquired during the marriage, so each spouse claims half of it. No factors influencing the denial of claims were presented. The documents are duly executed. I do not understand why there are difficulties. Honorable Court. Hunter stood up, coughed. Maybe, according to the law, my wife has the right to a part of the apartment, dacha, but she is alone, and I have a family and hair. I expect the Honorable Court to take this fact into account. Why does Caroline need the apartment? Who can she bequeath it to? To someone else's uncle, to her lover? I don't want the property we've built up together to go to San Alfonso. I admit that Caroline will have a man who will not mind to lay his hands on her inheritance, and I will be able to properly manage, including her part of the property, so that she does not become a hostage of some scoundrel. Hunter, the court is not interested in your family problems. We are bound by the law, and the law requires you to either give Caroline the property or pay monetary compensation. You don't want to understand me. Hunter argued, why should I give anything to my ex-wife? She has enough money to buy whatever apartment she wants. It's not my fault she couldn't bear me a child. Can you imagine how a man feels when he's disinherited? I waited 10 years to hold my son in my arms. He blushed with excitement. And now this has happened. Yes, she owes me for the wasted years, and you're obliged to honor my protest. I am, you might say, Samuel, she turned to the lawyer. The application states that your client has a common business with the defendant. Yes, Samuel stood up. The couple started this business together, right after their marriage. The defendant, as soon as he filed for divorce, cut off his ex-wife's access to the office. My client lost her part of the business, thus her source of income. I demand an explanation from the defendant. If I may, Honorable Judge, Counselor Hunter, I'll make things a little clearer. My colleague apparently, he nodded his head in the direction of Samuel, does not have reliable information. Caroline gave her share to Hunter. Here, Honorable Court. He placed the documents in front of the judge. It says here that Sebastian Clark is currently the co-owner, and Caroline has nothing to do with the firm. Since she is already my client's ex-wife, she is not allowed to enter the office. The defendant has every right, at her discretion, to impose bans on the office as it is private property. But it can't be. Caroline jumped up from her seat. I didn't sign any papers. Hunter? She turned to her husband in confusion. Did you forge my signature? No way, dear. Hunter replied gloatingly. I would never go for it. And why would I? You yourself signed to give up your share of the business, and I, as a manager, appointed Sebastian as a co-owner instead of you. Any graphology test will confirm the authenticity of the documents. I'm sorry if you forgot that you resigned. That's not my problem. You're such a scoundrel, the woman exclaimed in her heart. You tricked me into signing the papers. I couldn't sign them of my own free will. You're lying. Did you hear that, Madam Justice? Hunter's voice was hysterical. She insulted me. I request that this be entered into the record. I demand that she be fined. She insulted me in front of witnesses. Now do you understand why I left her? She's been known to blame me for all her problems before. Sit down. The judge yelled at him and forced him down on the chair with a look. And you? She gave Caroline a warning look. I'm issuing a warning. Just a warning? Hunter jumped up again. You think she can humiliate me in front of strangers and only get a warning? I'll complain. I won't let it go. I know my rights. I'm reprimanding you. The judge gave the man a stern look. If you don't stop being hysterical, I'll have you removed from the courtroom. Samuel? She turned to the lawyer in a steady voice. Do you have anything to say about this? My client claimed she didn't sign any such documents. I have no reason not to trust her. So I'm requesting a graphology test. Caroline suspects that her signature may have been fraudulently obtained. Caroline? The judge had no right to sympathize with any of the participants in the trial, and yet the woman thought she saw a flicker of sympathy in her eyes. What do you have to say on this matter? Your Honor. Caroline was confused. I couldn't sign these papers of my own free will. To start a joint business, it was my idea. We've been developing our firm together all these years. It's my only source of income. Voluntarily handing over your share is like chopping off your right hand. Did you ever plan on handing over control of the firm to your husband? Well, yes. The woman recalled that a few months ago, Hunter urged her to sign the deeds over to him. There was a conversation, but I declined. I thought it was strange that he insisted on it, but I had no idea that he would take advantage of my gullibility. He was probably already planning to put me out of business, just waiting for the right opportunity. Well, the judge looked around the room. We are adjourned. The plaintiff's request for a graphological examination is granted. She struck the gavel, announcing that the session was over. Everyone in the room filed out of the room. You can't prove anything anyway. Hunter smirked. The apartment and the summer house didn't work out, but you won't get the firm, and you don't know when you'll get the compensation. I will slow down its payment as much as possible. Turns out you can be sneaky. Too bad I only got a real look at you now. Caroline replied to his lunge. Don't be discouraged. Samuel tried to calm her down. We'll fight again. No, Samuel. Caroline felt completely defeated. It's not going to work. Hunter had probably slipped the documents he needed into the pile of papers he'd had to sign lately. It's my own fault for not looking. I always trusted him like I trusted myself, and now I'm paying the price. We can't prove I did it by mistake. It's my signature, there's no doubt about it. He wouldn't be so brazen if he wasn't sure. "Who is Sebastian?" Samuel asked. "Where did he come from?" "He's a friend of Hunter's." "Wasn't he surprised that you signed over your part of the business to him?" "We don't know how Hunter explained my decision to him." Caroline noted. "He probably doesn't even know that he's unwittingly become an accomplice in our fight. Today I saw another Hunter, and this one is capable of any meanness." They went to their cars. "Caroline, how would you like to go to a coffee shop? Have a cup of coffee, discuss our next move." "I'd like that." The woman was pleased. "Frankly speaking, I don't want to be alone now. Your support is very important to me." They stopped at a cafe, sat down at a table, ordered coffee. "Samuel, maybe. To hell with this firm. I don't want to keep litigating. I'm tired of it, and it's embarrassing. Hunter will pay me back the money for the apartment and the summer house, so I won't be on the street anymore. I don't want to see him anymore. I want to forget that life and start from scratch. As for the business, I can organize a new one. I'm not used to it. I was never a kept woman. We were equal partners. I have a lot of ideas in my head. I have the strength, and I don't need anything else. Of course, it's not easy to start from scratch, but I'm a strong woman." Caroline, Samuel admired her. "Why don't we use the first name?" "I don't mind." The woman smiled. The young people jokingly clinked their cups, cementing a new round of relations. Having finished their coffee, they went outside and sat down on a bench. "Honestly, I've long wanted to offer you to complete the case. Although, for the sake of your happiness, I'm ready for a lot. And if necessary, we'll finish the job. Though I realize there's little chance of justice. Alas, we have no witnesses who can testify that Hunter deliberately wanted to take your firm away from you. I don't think he discussed his plans with anyone, unless it was his mistress, and she wouldn't give him up. Why chop down the tree you're sitting on? But I'm not gonna give up. Your husband has overstepped his bounds. You see, some circumstances have come up. It's not just business." He hesitated. "It took me a long time to decide to tell you, but I have to. I can't keep silent any longer, and you'll find out someday, but I'd rather do it now. Maybe the blow won't be so hard." "What else?" Caroline asked anxiously. "I thought that nothing could be worse than to lose a well-promoted business. What other problem has come over my head? Have you noticed any unhealthy atmosphere around you lately? Anything strange? People treating you differently? Maybe they've been asking strange questions? Think back." "No," Caroline said, confused, feverishly going over the recent events in her memory. "Well, yes," she remembered. "For some reason my friends started avoiding me, as if I were a leper, or had borrowed money from them and didn't want to pay it back. Money's off the table, so that leaves lepers. You know something about that? Your husband, he was silent for a moment, trying to find the right words. He's spreading vicious rumors about you." "About me?" The woman marveled. "But there is nothing in my life for which I should blush." "Oh, you underestimate your ex-husband. And what are these rumors?" Samuel frowned, not sure where to begin. "Samuel, don't be stalling. I'll find out anyway. Not today, but tomorrow. Why did my friends start avoiding me? I've been wondering that myself. I somehow tried not to pay attention to their strange behavior, especially since I didn't care about it at all. Hunter tells every corner the story that you cheated on him at the beginning of your life together." "I cheated? Is he sick?" "No, no one would believe that. He had no reason to question my fidelity. As you can see, there are those who believe it, but that's not all. He accuses you of not having children because you allegedly got pregnant by your lover to cover up the sin, had an abortion, and that's the reason for your infertility. But that's utter nonsense. Caroline gasped in shock. It was nothing like that. He's the first and only man I've ever been with. Why would he want to spread rumors about me? I don't understand. He knows better than anyone what I've been through, where I've been, what doctors I've seen. They say it's just the way it is. But I've always been faithful to him, and tears came to the woman's eyes. She suddenly turned to Samuel, took his head in her palms, looked intently into his eyes for a minute, then kissed him hard. Caroline, I'm all for it, but Samuel stared at her uncomprehendingly. Don't you want to explain yourself? Thank you. She smiled, letting him out of her arms. You've just opened my eyes. I never thought I'd be able to use my most potent argument against Hunter, but now I've lost all my doubts. I'm going to fight with his methods. What are you doing? Isn't it dangerous? Can I help? Tomorrow I'll meet with Hunter, and we'll finish this whole story, and then we'll start a new one with you. I don't really know what's going on, of course, but I like your attitude. Samuel took her hand. Were you being serious about us just now? Yes, Caroline answered simply. You've become really important to me, and you're the only one who has stood by me and who I can trust right now. So why don't we go to my place? The woman saw the passion in the man's eyes. Not this time. Caroline smiled guiltily at him. I have to get ready for my meeting with Hunter. I think it will be painful for him. With these words, she got up. Walk me to my car, please. It's been a long day. I need to get my thoughts in order and be alone. Everyone got into their cars. Caroline arrived at the apartment, found a folder with documents among her things, sat on the sofa in the living room, went through the papers. She sat with the folder in her hands for a while, then stood up, shoved it into her bag, and dialed her husband's number. Hunter, we need to meet tomorrow. What do you want from me? He asked rudely. Are you hoping I'll give you your firm back? You can't. It's mine alone. You've had enough of what you got. There's nothing more to talk about. I have another life. I want to forget about you forever. Calm down. The woman wrinkled her nose. I'm not going to sue you for anything more. Then there's no reason to meet. I don't want to waste time on empty conversations. You're already nothing to me, and in general, do not you allow the idea that I just do not want to see you. It's bad enough I'm seeing you in court. Believe me, it's important to you first of all. Caroline assured me. Come to our place. I'll be waiting. Believe me, I wouldn't distract you from your family concerns if it wasn't serious. All right, Hunter grumbled. We'll see what you're going to take me away from my work, but I know you like the back of my hand, and you're not going to win me over. I'm not gonna convince you of anything, just talk to you. I repeat, it's in your best interest. I won't keep you long, don't worry. She hung up and went into the bathroom. She stood under the hot shower for a long time, as if trying to wash away the remnants of a hard day. Sleep overcame her as soon as she closed her eyes. The next day, Caroline sat on a bench in a small park, under a huge lilac bush, and waited for Hunter. This had once been their spot. She spotted him from afar and waved. What? He asked, stopping in front of her. The meeting place wasn't chosen by chance, was it? Are you trying to trigger an old memory in me? Don't try, it won't work. No. Caroline shook her head. You think too much of yourself. It's just that there aren't too many people here, so we can talk in peace. You're not trying hard enough. You're my unfortunate past, only now I'm truly happy. I have the woman I love and the son I've dreamed of all these years. Understand, you have no chance to negotiate with me. For the sake of my child's future, I am capable of many things, even forgery, but you will not be able to prove anything. It's a shame you're acting like a narcissistic egomaniac. Greed and spite have shot your eyes. You've completely forgotten that I have nothing to do with the woman you painted in my guise. But I have not come to appeal to your conscience. Your family life has put it too firmly to sleep. But it matters not. I came to give it to you." She held out a folder of papers. "Here." "What's this?" he asked suspiciously. "Remember, about 5 years ago, we were at the clinic for a checkup. About your infertility." "Yes, we took the tests together." The woman put the folder on the bench next to her. "That's the way it's done, to find out who's having problems. I remember the doctor said it was because of you. We can't have children. We had more treatments, but it didn't work." "Yeah, I remember all that well. But why are we having this conversation now?" "I lied to you then." Caroline answered calmly. "There." She nodded at the papers. "It's all written. I just loved you too much. Anyway, I wasn't the one with the problem. You were the one with the problem. You're the one who can't have kids. You're infertile." "Are you kidding me? That can't be true." "The doctor said with one voice that you're infertile and they can't help you. They said that at my request. I couldn't let you feel guilty. I didn't want to humiliate your manhood. I was willing to take on the burden of responsibility. I did it all for you, for your peace of mind. At the time, I thought the sacrifice was worth it. No, I don't believe you. And I have proof, my son. If I am barren, then whose is it? That's a question I think you should ask your new wife." Caroline shrugged. "And study the documents at your leisure. I have no interest in deceiving you. Do you want to go to the clinic we went to? We still have the medical records. That's all I wanted to tell you. You see, you were wrong to be afraid. Our meeting was short-lived." She rose from the bench and walked slowly down the alley. Hunter looked at the folder in horror. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it. She's on purpose for me, slipping this to me now, jealous of my happiness. My boy, my Jordan, no one can take him away from me. Distrust my wife, my Kathy." He took the folder with shaking hands, sat down on the bench, and opened it. "No, no," the man repeated in desperation, leafing through the medical documents. "Not true. Why did she keep silent for so many years? It turns out that it's my fault. Is it because of me that we didn't have children? I'm the one who's infertile? Is there such a thing?" He groaned in impotent rage, threw the folder away, papers flying around, clutched his head, started rocking from side to side, repeating, "It can't be, it can't be. I don't believe it. Why did she take all the blame? Why? And I'm a fool. I've been reproaching her all my life. God, what a fool I am." Hunter didn't know how long he sat like that. Then he woke up, put the certificates neatly into a folder, got up and walked down the alley to his car. He felt dizzy. His eyes were hazy. The man got into the car, started it, and drove off. He drove the car, circling aimlessly around the city. Finally, his eyes fell on the sign bar, turned off the engine, and entered the hall. Vodka 200. He tossed the bartender a drink and sat down on a stool. "Can I help you?" The young man put the glass in front of him, looking sympathetically at the man. "No." Hunter waved his head negatively, draining the contents of the glass. "No one can help me." "Do you understand?" He stared at the bartender with cloudy eyes. "I just found out I can't have children. I understand." "What do you understand?" The man lunged at him. "I'm not a man. It's a judgment. Life is over for me." "Pour some more." He moved an empty glass to the young man. "You think I'm the only one. The main thing is to have a loving wife and children. They can be adopted. How many of them are brought up in orphanages? As far as I know, It's not hard to do. I don't want someone else's. I've always dreamed of my own, and I blame my wife that she can't give me an heir. And she hid the fact that I was infertile. Can you understand? Everyone was pointing fingers at her, and she took the blame, took care of me, protected my male ego, and me. I cheated on her. Can you believe that? I cheated on her because I was excited about being a father. A noble woman, said the bartender, filling Hunter's glass again. What the hell do I need her nobility for? The man drank the glass in one gulp. You can't understand how I feel right now, right here. He pounded his chest with his fist. I'm crushed. He pressed the bridge of his nose with his fingers. Then he slammed his fist down on the tabletop. The glass bounced and clinked pitifully. Will you calm down, please? The young man looked warily at the visitor and took the glass from him. It's not a fatal diagnosis, they live with it. But for me, it's death. With drunken, bloodshot eyes, he looked at the bartender. Because now I have a wife, a new wife, and a son waiting for me at home. So your diagnosis is wrong? No, the diagnosis is correct. I've studied the test results. There's a mistake waiting for me at home, and I need to fix it. Hunter threw the money on the table and staggered out of the bar. He got to his apartment and rang the doorbell. Are you crazy? Kathy jumped on him indignantly. You know Jordan's asleep right now. Where are your keys? Are you drunk? Oh, you bastard. Why are you drunk? Why are you so happy? And let you come into the house like that? Yes, I'm drunk. Hunter woke up, pushed her aside, and entered the hallway. Jesus, your son should see you now. My son? Hunter laughed bitterly. He can't be my son. How dare you say such a thing? Kathy was outraged. What's the matter with you? You're not yourself. Go sleep it off. I'm out of my mind because you shamelessly deceived me. Me? The woman was staring at him. What are you trying to accuse me of? Go to the bedroom. Tomorrow we'll talk to you. Speak. Hunter pinned her against the wall. Whose baby did you slip me? Admit it, bitch. I'll find out anyway, and then there'll be no mercy. You're hurting me. Kathy shrieked. What kind of insulting innuendo is that? How can you suspect me of anything? He's your son. You know how much I love you, don't you? I don't want anyone but you. I don't believe you. Hunter went into the living room without undressing. Why are you mad at me? The woman cried. What have I done wrong? If I've done something wrong, tell me. Just spare me your suspicions. I never cheated on you. I don't need to. That I willingly believe, agreed suddenly Hunter. Because you were afraid I'd throw you out with your brat, because you've gotten him, even before you got me. You've got it all figured out. You set your nets, and I fell for it like a fool. You're out of your mind. I don't want to hear this nonsense. Kathy wanted to leave, but Hunter grabbed her arm and yanked her toward him. You're not going anywhere until you tell me whose baby it is. At least I have a right to know who his daddy is. Yes, it's yours. The woman shouted desperately. The fruit of our love. Don't you remember how excited you were when I told you I was expecting a baby? That minute you were ready to carry me in your arms, and now you're accusing me of I don't know why. Oh, I get it. She suddenly calmed down and spoke softly. You're pissed off about the divorce and the property division. You're on edge. I'm even willing to forgive you for getting drunk. Let's both of us calm down now. You go to bed, and tomorrow we'll talk. There was a baby crying in the nursery. Your son is awake. It's not my son. Don't you dare call him my son. What are you talking about? Of course he's yours. I can't have children. I'm infertile. Infertile how? Kathy asked in confusion. You said Caroline had some health problems, but you're fine? Yeah, that's what I thought. Turns out it was my fault we didn't have children. Maybe it's a mistake. You know, doctors make mistakes sometimes. Or is this your ex-wife's way of getting back at you for cheating on her? There's no mistake. Hunter sank down tiredly on the couch and handed her a folder with documents. Here are the test results. I'm sterile. Caroline kept it from me for my own peace of mind. And you took advantage of the situation and forced another man's baby on me. Why would you do that? I love you so much. I destroyed my world for you. I thought, this is my happiness, but it turned out, warmed on his chest, ungrateful bitch. I did everything for you, kicked your wife out of the house, and you don't even have the courage to admit to me that you cheated on me. I wonder when you were going to tell me Jordan wasn't mine. Wouldn't it be fun if your lover showed up on your doorstep one day and said, son, I'm your daddy? You know how a man feels when he's been cheated. Tell me, asshole, who's Jordan from? At least do the honorable thing now. You know I have enough money to find out the truth, but then don't expect any mercy. Tell me, I'm giving you one last chance, or I'll throw you out on the street with him right now. Don't expect to appeal to my conscience. I lost everything when I was mean to Caroline. Yes, Kathy, who had already seen the documents and realized she couldn't get out of confessing, decided to open up. It's not your baby, and I don't love you. Are you happy now? I don't want to see you and your son anymore. Slowly rising, Hunter said. Kathy backed away. The man looked creepy. I'm going to leave now, and in the morning when I come back, I want your spirit out of my house. The child, it's not his fault he has such a mean mother, so for the first time I'll give you some money so you can get settled. It's the only thing you can count on, and thank God I didn't file a police report on you for fraud. You're dead to me. Hunter left, slamming the door loudly. In the nursery, Jordan was crying. Kathy rushed to him, took him in her arms soothingly and cried, "Oh my God, I'm such a fool." Everything turned out so wonderfully, Hunter didn't even question that it was his baby. And now what? Where will I go with my son? Back to my mom. I can't believe it's all fallen apart. She calmed her son, put him in his crib, and went to the bedroom. Suddenly, the phone rang. Hunter? Overjoyed, Kathy grabbed the receiver. What's up, girlfriend? She heard the mocking voice of Kelly, whom she had been friends with since high school. It's me. Hi. The woman snickered. I thought it was Hunter. Did you two have a fight? Not just a fight. He demanded I get out of his house. She cried. I'm desperate. I have nowhere to go. But why did he do that to you? You had such a tender love. I was even jealous and the child. You've been telling me that Hunter was crazy about Jordan, that he had no children by his first wife. He gave up his hair? Bastard. I didn't see that coming. That's the point. Kathy cried. He found out Jordan wasn't his son. What? Not his son? Kelly was surprised. Then whose is it? Wait, is it John? You motherfucker. What was I supposed to do? We were together for so long, and then Hunter showed up. You think I could have missed him? I mean, he's a very wealthy man. He's got his own big business. What do you take from John? Wait, I don't get it. You dated them at the same time. What's the big deal? Kathy shrugged. I loved John, and I kept Hunter as a backup, so he came in handy. When I got pregnant, I thought John would be happy. We'd be together. He'd propose. I even dismissed the fact that he wasn't rich. We'd work something out together. And he refused to have a son. Said he didn't want to be a burden. It was too late to get an abortion, and Hunter, He talked about in hair so often that I didn't hesitate to tell him about the baby, and he believed it. John disappeared from my life, and then I was all over Hunter. I didn't even have to convince him of anything, and he believed it was his. Of course, what else could he do? He'd been dreaming of an hair for 10 years, and now he was so lucky. For my sake, he divorced his wife and took away her company, and everything was going well for me, if it were not for his wife, who after 10 years decided to confess to her husband in the forgery of documents. He's sterile, he can't have children. Oh shit, Kelly cursed. What now? Did he kick you out? He won't forgive me. Kathy was silent, swallowing her tears. He told me to get out of his apartment. I don't know, what am I supposed to do? Where will she go with him now? I hate that Caroline, she ruined all my plans. If Hunter can't have kids, let him adopt Jordan. Talk to him, cry to him, see if it works. Won't he forgive you? He needs an heir anyway, and with you and your baby, he loves you. Now I don't know how stupid I am. It's a joke. Stop crying. Wait till morning. Can't you seduce a man? Wait for him. Meet him in nice lingerie, set the table. I don't have to tell you how to please a man, do I? I'm sure you can win him back. Why am I so unlucky? John ran out on me, now Hunter. What's wrong with me? Don't worry, girlfriend. It's not over yet. I don't know. You should have seen him. He was so drunk and pissed off. Stop whining. It's the morning after. Get a grip on yourself. Take pity. Men love defenseless women. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. It wasn't until late that night that Caroline reached home. She parked the car and headed for her apartment. Not reaching the driveway, she slowed her step, noticing Samuel on the bench, a huge bouquet of white roses lying next to him. "What are you doing here?" she asked as the man stepped up to meet her. "Somehow I was sure you would be sad after talking to Hunter. I decided to come and support you." He handed her the flowers. "You are an amazing woman. I never cease to admire you. So much stamina, so much patience, human dignity." Samuel looked at her tenderly. "I've never met a woman like you." "Thank you very much." "Yeah, you're right. I'm really sad. You know, it was really hard for me to put an end to my relationship with Hunter, 10 years together. But now I'm at ease. I'm rid of the shadows of the past. Fate has put everything in its place. Evil is punished. I am no longer interested in my husband's new family. Do not hurt his attitude to me. I am glad that my life has changed so abruptly recently. I don't regret anything because you are next to me." Caroline hugged the man tightly, which means that now everything will be fine.
Subscribe and click the bell. This is how one unexpected meeting can not only radically change the life of one person and save another. Having learned the bitter experience, you begin to appreciate every happy moment, every new opportunity, and those who love you, sincerely and freely. Camille's life was difficult from the very childhood. Despite the fact that the girl was born into a family, quite a successful entrepreneur, Stephen was quite successful in pharma. He worked with large chains and supplied medicines to pharmacies. But in those days, the competition was tough. As a result, the family constantly lived in fear. The production was often attacked and ruined by people dissatisfied with the quality and cost of medicines. Even the workers themselves went on strike, demanding that they be given free products. Stephen struggled to control the state of his business and the company's quality, productivity, and profitability. At times, it was easy enough to do so, and in those intervals, the family could afford a life of luxury. But the moment the mass strikes started again, and there was damage to equipment, components for the creation of medicines, and so on, Life became difficult. Not only had to cut all possible expenses, but also had to hide from disgruntled people. After all, the threat was for each member of the family entrepreneur. In general, by the standards of the 90s, the family lived quite well. They had their own housing. They could afford to buy clothes every season and had no need for food. But that was only until Stephen's business went bankrupt. As much as the man tried to rehabilitate himself in his direction, find new suppliers and investors, it was never possible to restore the former company. Hard times began for the family. Stephen had a wife, Emily, and a daughter, who was 16 years old at the time. Camille. The woman did not work, but only took care of the household, doing her best to make sure that her daughter received a decent education and grew up to be an excellent hostess. She taught Camille how to serve her properly. Table server to a huge number of dishes told about the history of the country and the world, helped in solving homework, and supported in all endeavors. The relationship between them was trusting. The girl told about all the joys and worries of them. Parents tried to buy Camille the most fashionable outfits, various scientific books and magazines that were interesting to her. They often took the girl to new cities and gave her to all kinds of circles so that she could find her vocation in life and decide on her favorite line of work. By the age of 16, Camille already knew for sure that she wanted to become a famous chef. That after the last year of school, she would definitely go to university and get the desired profession. But life has arranged otherwise. It was in the year when the girl was to finish school. Her father's business was completely destroyed. The family did not have any means of subsistence left, and the possibility of sending her daughter to another city to study at the best university. Not anymore. Parents did not say anything to Camille about plans for the future, and every time tried in every possible way to postpone this conversation. But the girl once found herself in the right place at the right time, and was able to hear that conversation, which not only shocked her, but made her horrified by the indifference and hypocrisy of her parents in relation to herself. "We had a life to come back to," Camille's father said, glaring menacingly at his wife. It was obvious that she did not particularly like the man's proposal and that she strongly doubted the necessity of agreeing to it. "Nothing terrible will happen. She'll love him and everything will be fine. You'll see. And we'll go on living our lives without denying ourselves anything. And we're not eating the last of the pasta." "How can you do that?" Camille's mother said sadly. "We can't just decide her fate on our own. What if he's not as good as you say he is? What if she just doesn't like him? And then she'll have to live her whole life with a man she doesn't like." Emily looked at her husband with some pain in her eyes. He looked completely calm and determined. It was obvious that the man was determined and that no amount of persuasion would change his mind. Camille, who stood quietly outside the door, did not yet realize that she was the one in question, although she had an inkling of it. The essence of the problem was also unclear. All that was clear was that her parents were talking about some guy she should like. The girl began to listen carefully to the further conversation of her parents. Everything would be fine. She was old enough and independent enough to start a separate family life. They would live like this for a couple of years, and then they could get married. If they do well, the man said, and then poured himself something into a glass at the table. "But what makes you so sure our daughter will like that guy? And we don't know him at all. What if he turns out to be just a cruel tyrant who will just abuse her? We from the whole family know only his father, and that's it." Emily was outraged by her husband's cold and indifferent attitude towards her daughter. "If the father is normal, the son will be normal too," answered Camille's father. "We have no other choice anyway, either to die in poverty or to give my daughter in marriage. The second option is much better. And Camille will live in luxury and will be able to afford an excellent education in the future, and we will not need anything, because we will get a part of the Voloshina family business." There was silence in the kitchen. It was clear that everyone was thinking about something else. And at the time when Stephen was already thinking about how best to play the acquaintance and quickly play the wedding ceremony, his wife was thinking, How could one so easily dispose of another person's life? And how would their daughter be accepted in her new family? Camille stood in utter shock after hearing what she had heard and could not believe that her parents were willing to give her in marriage to an unloved man whom she had never even seen simply for money. In order to get a piece of some company and improve her financial situation, she went to her room, thinking over what she had heard and not understanding how to behave and what to do in the situation. Should she refuse her father's plan or agree to his proposal? After all, they had done everything possible to provide her with a carefree life for so many years. Should she sacrifice her own happiness for the benefit of her parents, or should she refuse to sacrifice and build her life according to her own decisions? On this day, her parents did not say anything to Camille, but she was already thinking over all the advantages and disadvantages of each of the options. As a result, coming to a final decision was not as easy as it seemed initially. The girl was panicky and constantly pensive, and it was difficult not to notice it. So it went on for several days. And then Emily did not endure and decided to talk to her daughter heart to heart. The dream is the beginning. She opens the door to Camille's room. Did something happen to you? You've been sad lately. Is there a problem at school, or did you have another fight with your girlfriend? She sat down on the edge of the bed, clearly indicating that she was expecting an answer from the girl. Camille hesitated for a few moments. Should she discuss her worries with her mother? After all, they hadn't told her anything about a fiancé or marriage. Perhaps they would decide everything on their own, and they would give up the decision and find another option to get back on track financially. Besides, there was still hope that the conversation was not about her, although exactly the opposite was clear from the dialogue of her parents. The girl decided to deal with the situation on her own for the time being, trying not to involve her parents, so that the decision would be made exclusively by her, and for all the consequences she was also responsible for herself. No, I'm fine. It's just that I've already started to prepare for the exams, and I'm very tired of it all. The girl shifted her gaze to the woman, who looked no less worried and loaded than she did. What's wrong with you? You've been kind of sad lately, too. The question clearly took Emily by surprise. She wasn't ready to discuss her husband's plan with her daughter. And so, just like Camille, she decided to keep her problems quiet and divert the conversation away from her daughter, so as not to arouse any suspicion. You know my father's out of work. It's made life a lot harder. You've got debts, you've got to eat, and you'll be graduating soon, and you'll have to continue your studies. And our situation leaves much to be desired. The woman took a deep breath, and it became clear how worried she was about her daughter's future. I think maybe I should get a job. I have a degree in seamstressing. I can take orders or go to the sewing shop. I'll get the hang of it, and I'll be good at it. Emily smiled, looking at her daughter. Who's going to take care of the house then? You won't have time to do everything yourself after work. And Dad's hardly ever home now. He's always looking for ways to start earning again and get back to his own business. It turns out that the house will not look so well maintained and attractive, and the flower garden will have to be abandoned. There would be no one to take care of it. Camille looked at her mother. She looked at her mother, looking away from another Russian test. The woman said nothing. She just sat with her head down and did not understand what she should do in this situation. On the one hand, there was really not enough money to live on, and on the other hand, so much time and effort had been invested in the garden to achieve the result that is now, and therefore Emily could not just give it up. "Come on, Mom," the girl muttered, seeing how hard it was for the woman during this period. "We will solve everything. You do not worry. And I can also go to work after school, and then everything will be fine. And university, I'll finish a little later, when I have some free money. Or I'll just take night courses. They've become very fashionable lately." "Yes, honey, everything will be all right," said the girl's mother, still in the same depressed and frustrated voice. "The main thing is to believe in yourself and never give up on your dreams, and then everything will be fine." The woman was about to leave the room when she stopped and added, saying each word in a barely audible voice. The main thing is to make all decisions thoughtfully. Otherwise, you can lose all the joys of life. Remember that the most precious thing you have is yourself, and other people should be responsible for their own life and fate. After that, the woman left the room, barely leaving her all alone without waiting for an answer. This only made it worse. After all, the girl was already sure that she would agree to a relationship with a strange guy just to help her parents establish their condition and affairs. But now, after her mother's words, there were again doubts about how Camille's life would turn out if she could not fall in love with a guy. A few days flew by. The weekend was approaching. Camille was studying hard to pass her final exams at school. Her mother was tending to the house and garden as usual, while her father was always looking for a job that would bring the family back to its former prosperity. Emily never went to get a job. Her husband was adamantly opposed to such an idea, and after a brief argument, the woman still yielded to him. In addition, she herself married quite early and never worked. Therefore, she is possessed by fear and worries about the success of work in her direction. Although, by the way, she has perfectly graduated from a specialized secondary school and even had some awards for professionalism. Friday evening, Stephen returned home a little early and from the doorstep announced to his wife about tomorrow's important dinner. Tomorrow we are to have some very important guests. Christopher and his son. They'll be here at 6 o'clock and everything should be ready by then. Today I helped him find a new area of distribution, and now he wants to discuss further business matters that might help us become business owners again. Co-owners, to be exact. The man was very happy about this arrangement, and it was obvious that he was already looking forward to tomorrow, or rather, tonight. Is this the guy we discussed? Emily asked with some sadness, looking at her husband. Yes, that's the guy. He's very bright, and I had a personal interaction with him today. Polite, courteous. I told you it was gonna be great, and you were worried and stressed out. And now all you have to do is say Camille. No. What? The woman's making a fuss. She can't just walk in and say her future husband is coming over tomorrow. It would cause her great psychological trauma. She has to love him, and we're just gonna help her love him. It's better for everyone, and she won't blame us in the future for choosing the wrong husband in case of any problems. Jesus, Emily, we don't have time for all this planning and games. Camille, grown-up girl, she must realize that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. Besides, the guy's normal, and he really likes her. I showed him the pictures today, and he really wants to meet her. And it will all work out, Stephen replied. After that, he headed towards his daughter's room in high spirits. Wait, I'm telling you. Emily rushed after him, stopping him abruptly with a jerk of her arm. I'll talk to her about everything myself. Okay, not you. You're not gonna be able to properly explain to her what's going on. And we'll end up without a daughter. The woman looked anxious and worried. Okay, the idea is you talk to her, but no games. She should understand perfectly well that this guy is our salvation, and they should be fine. Let her do whatever it takes to get him to like her and build a happy future with him. If the fool doesn't, everything will work out just fine. The man looked troubled to some extent, but also as relaxed as possible. He did not even doubt that everything should go the best way, that his daughter would agree to marry the guy, and that they would subsequently get a part of a very profitable and prosperous business. The man had no conscience for pursuing his own selfish goals, for possibly ruining his daughter's future. Emily slowly made her way up to Camille's room. She didn't know how to properly present all the information and how to make sure her daughter didn't think she was just being used as a source of income, although in fact she was. Despite the fact that the woman was strongly opposed to this arrangement and the development of her child's life story, she simply could not cross her husband. She could not say anything in response, so as not to end up with nothing on the street, no job and no loved ones around. And here she is already knocking on the door. still not realizing exactly what to say. On the one hand, she blamed her husband for trying to get money any way he can, even to the detriment of the dearest person in his life. On the other hand, she consoled herself with the fact that her husband was doing all this only for the sake of improving their welfare, so that they would not starve and would not need anything. After a brief lull, Camille's voice was heard, which was calm and at the same time sad and depressed. "Are you coming in? Or should I come out to you? Why just stand outside the door?" Emily opened the door and headed towards her daughter's bed, which she sat on every time she talked. There was complete silence in the room for a few minutes, and then the girl couldn't stand it. "Mom, did you want something? Or did you just come to watch me study for the exam? I don't think it's very interesting. Besides, I'm distracted by you, so I can't concentrate on my assignments." Camille was somewhat tense and frustrated. Lately, she had been having some difficulties in her studies, which she tried to solve in every possible way. Without tutors, it was proving difficult to understand new topics and continue to do well in school. But the family could not afford their services. Therefore, the girl tried to learn new topics by any means and sew on them as many assignments as possible. "Yeah, honey, I wanted to talk to you. I just don't know how to start." The conversation was spoken by Emily, and lowered her head, wrinkled my nose. "But whatever it is, it still has to be said," Camille answered her. "That's right. Papa has invited a good acquaintance of his to dinner tomorrow, and he's coming with his son. The boy is very nice. Father says he's very polite and courteous, but tomorrow we'll know exactly how he is, and Dad and I need you to be at dinner too. It will not be nice that on the one hand, the child showed respect, and on the other hand, did not come." The woman was silent, trying to find the right words to continue the conversation. She didn't know how she could make her daughter understand that she would have to get along with the guy who was coming to dinner, and that she would have to build a very successful love relationship with him in the future. "The guy's name is John," Emily continued. "He's only a couple years older than you and already works for his father's company. He's an engineer. He is a very handsome young man who is working hard to develop in his direction and is ready to start a family." After this phrase, the woman raised her head to assess her daughter's reaction, but she just kept on solving the study option, not reacting in any way to the woman's words. "And Dad says that he really liked it. He showed pictures of you, and the guy was really into you. He really wants to meet you." Camille's mother was silent, not knowing what else to add to her speech. She couldn't tell her directly that she would have to marry a man of convenience and live with a complete stranger. She wouldn't even wish such a life on her enemy. And to be pushed into such a difficult decision. Her own daughter. Camille understood perfectly well. She remembered the conversation between her parents. And right after her mother had mentioned the dinner with her father's friend and his son, everything had become clear. The parents had found no other way to fix the financial situation and return to normal life. And so the only option left was to form an alliance between her and a strange guy to get a piece of the other family's business. Camille did not know how to react to the words of her mother, who was so carefully trying to tell her not the most pleasant news. She took a few minutes to go through her thoughts and mull over everything that was going on. After which she spoke calmly. "I hope that we'll get along well with him. Maybe we'll even have a good conversation, if he's really a good person." Camille mouthed. This without even taking her eyes off the book she was reading while sitting at the table. "I hope I'll make a good impression on all of them, too. Quite a good impression. I'll try my best to do so." The girl continued reading, in no other way, not responding to her mother's words. She could sense how difficult this conversation was making her feel, and so she made the decision to just sweetly agree to dinner and give hope that she would like the guy, and he would like her, and then everything would be just fine. Despite the fact that Camille has never met John yet, she already disliked him. On the one hand, there is the possibility that the guy himself is not in the best situation and just has to get married to somehow improve his family's condition. But on the other hand, how could he say he liked her if they'd never met in their lives? So he judged a girl solely on her looks, which is the worst trait in a man. In Camille's opinion, she herself never judged anyone by their clothes and appearance, but by getting to know the person, and only after that to draw some conclusions about him. For her, the soul, behavior, and character were more important than mere rags, which would not reveal a rotten soul. The girl had no choice, because she had already agreed to dinner, and therefore she could only hope that she could get along with the guy, and he would be a very adequate young man who would treat her with respect. Otherwise, to build a relationship with him will be as difficult as possible. After all, the girl was used to independence and normal relations with her surroundings to mutual respect. In addition, she had a very high self-esteem. She evaluated herself and realized that she would not allow anyone to treat her as a servant, as one who owed something to someone. She is above it all, and would rather go to work to earn her own living than to grovel before someone, to tolerate disregard for her feelings and emotions. But only time would tell what her future husband would be like. Camille began to prepare for dinner several hours in advance. She wanted to make a positive impression on important people, and therefore she was responsible for the choice of outfit and image in general. It was decided to dress quite discreetly and laconically. Thus, elegantly classic black dress, curls, and minimal makeup looked perfect, although it added visual age to Camille. By the time she was just about to sit down and read a book, the doorbell rang. Voices were heard on the first floor. It became clear that it was the guests who had been invited to dinner. "Camille, we have guests coming downstairs." The father's voice came from downstairs. The girl looked at herself in the mirror once more, fixed her dress curls, and headed for the first floor. She felt a terrible excitement and worry about what her potential future husband would be like. After a few seconds of confusion, she headed to the first floor, where Emily was already telling the guests to come to the table. Camille stopped on the threshold to assess the situation. At the table sat her father, a grown, solid man who was his buddy, and a young guy who was staring intently in her direction. She made her way to the table, and the moment the girl was almost seated at the well, he said, "Honey, this seat is for your mother. Please sit down in the other empty seat. I would like her to sit next to me." Father smiled. The only free seat left was next to the boy. He still continued to stare at the girl, making her uncomfortable. But the moment she sat down next to him, John just shifted his already bored look to his father, making it clear that he wasn't very interested in this dinner. There was an immediate conversation between the fathers. The young men just sat silently. No one dared to start a conversation. "So you are still a little schoolgirl?" Suddenly the boy asked, without even turning toward Camille. "I thought you'd be older." "Yes," the girl replied. "I'm finishing my last year of high school this year. If it works out, I'll go to college. And if not, I can work." At that moment, John turned towards the girl and said, "A girl doesn't need an education to be a great housewife. Your mother should have taught you everything. School, okay, to have something to talk to a girl about. It's worth finishing. And the rest is a man's prerogative. And I don't think girls should be allowed to go to university at all. If you can't find a normal husband, then work as a servant, and that's it. Don't get involved in men's professions." All this sounded quite aggressive and even angry. Camille was silent for a couple of minutes, thinking about what she had just heard. After that, she answered to the guy, saying with confidence, "I do not think that a girl should not study. Education plays a huge role in everyone's life. And if there is an opportunity to get it, you should hold on to it. Otherwise, you could just be left with nothing and really only work as a servant." The girl was silent for a few seconds and then added, "What about marriage?" "Well, if a girl is lucky enough to get married, and there is no need for additional sources of income in the family, if her husband fully provides and satisfies all her needs, then you cannot work and just do the house, keep cozy in order. But it happens that for one reason or another money is needed, and one husband cannot earn it in large quantities, and then the wife can also go to work, so that their joint life became much better. The girl finished her thought. After that, she was silent again. For a few minutes, the boy did not react to Camille's utterances, but just listened attentively to the conversation of the fathers, who were discussing business and further development in this or that direction. And only at the moment when the conversation of the parents came to the usual worldly questions, he again turned towards the girl and in no less rude and arrogant manner spoke. If a girl is not a fool, she will not marry a man who cannot provide for her and fulfill all her financial needs. And in case money is scarce, the husband should look for additional ways to earn money, but certainly not the wife. And if a girl starts working, she loses all her attractiveness and sexuality and just becomes a worn-out workhorse, living with whom is boring and unbearable. The guy looked at the girl, gauging her reaction and waiting for an answer. What about love? After all, not everything in this world is decided by money. It sounded in some way even childishly naive and stupid, but at the same time the girl was completely sure that her position was correct. Can one live with a man without love? It would be a kind of violence against oneself. And besides, you'd have to spend an inordinate amount of time to get accustomed without love. I think it would be more violence to yourself than any relief in life. I'd rather work than live like that with someone I don't love. Love is something made up by sentimental poets. Nonsense, it doesn't exist. There is only the satisfaction of physical needs. And all these stories about the soul, about love, falling in love, affection, all this nonsense, replied the boy and turned away to his fathers. The conversation between the young men was definitely not going well. Despite the fact that the boy was outwardly attractive enough, kept his posture and looked decent, Camille did not like him at all, mostly because of his manner of speaking. She didn't agree with such a life position, and therefore she couldn't imagine how this guy was going to find a girlfriend and a future wife. Although, on the other hand, provided that love does not matter to him. And the most important thing is looks and fulfillment of physical needs. Special problems with finding a girl should not arise, especially he is ready to fully provide all her requests and desires. And therefore she can even not work and do not go to university. Such a future Camille clearly did not want for herself. She had goals and ambitions. She strived for education and development in the chosen direction. Therefore, life with such a man will definitely bring her disappointment. But there is a possibility that he will change. People change in the name of love and the person they love. Or it's not him. And the guy really rejects all feelings. For the rest of the dinner, the guy and the girl never spoke again. Their life positions were completely opposite, and therefore there was simply no point in continuing the dialogue. In addition, John devoted a huge amount of time exactly to the dialogue of fathers, trying not to miss a single detail. It was obvious that the guy was much more interested in work and career advancement, options for developing his own business, than the potential development of a love relationship with Camille. Toward the end of the dinner, when the guests were about to leave, Christopher spoke after shaking hands. Now we're expecting you for a return dinner. You'll get to meet my wife. She couldn't make it with us tonight. She had a bad day. But I'm sure she'll be glad to get to know your family a little better, especially since we plan to be in-laws soon. Emily didn't expect such a statement from her guests. Therefore, she expected a mixed reaction from Camille. But the girl stood completely, calmly restraining her emotions and not giving the impression that what she said had hurt or shocked her in any way. Not once at dinner had anything been said about John's future, and therefore the girl assumed that it was just an acquaintance, after which everything could still change. But judging by the behavior and utterances of the guy, he did not care about feelings. The main thing for him was to get a girl and his wife who will not work and study and will just follow all his whims. After the guests had left, the father turned to his daughter and said, "But what do you think, John? He's a smart guy who knows his business well enough to be serious and responsible. I'm sure you like him. How could a girl not like him?" His father says that crowds hang on him, but he thinks only about the future of the company and devotes all his free time to education and development in his chosen direction. That's great, isn't it? I think you two get along great and will make a great married couple where you will have quite a bearable relationship. My father smiled as he looked at Camille, who was listening attentively without showing any emotion in response to his words. It seemed to me that he was just a sensual robot who was only looking for his own benefit and wanted to be in charge of the family, to make all the decisions himself and completely limit his wife's will. He said that the girl should not study and work, that her place at home is as a servant, and that's all there is to it. And the man should already earn and independently solve all arising issues. Is this normal for a family relationship? She asked, looking intently at her father. Emily, all this time, just stood and listened attentively to her husband and daughter. She couldn't believe that she was always so emotional and testy. Camille calmly talking about a potential marriage to a man she was seeing for the first time in her life. That she wasn't in front of the reading, but just calmly voicing her opinion, backing it all up with arguments and reasoning is unquestionable. The woman did not know whether to add something in this situation, on whose side it is better to stand, so she just kept quiet. But you know, there are different families. The father shrugged indifferently, making it clear that this situation is as calm as possible. The guy just has such a worldview that he wants to completely relieve his future wife of all worries and troubles and fully provide for her. This is the dream of almost every girl. So I honestly don't understand what exactly you're unhappy with. You won't have to spend a few more years on your education. You'll never have to work and scrape pennies for bread. You won't need anything. It's a great marriage that will make your life just perfect. The father looked reproachfully at his daughter, who was still standing calmly in front of him, waiting patiently for the answer to his question. I believe that such a marriage can bring nothing but indifference and disappointment in love, replied Camille. A husband should be chosen so that you want to spend every minute of your life with him, not so that you can hope that he will stay at work late at night again. Stephen was silent for a few moments. It was evident that the man was thinking over what he had said, that he had some doubts. But afterward he said indifferently, "You can get used to any man. And if you want it badly enough, not just affection, but love will appear. And the other person can be convinced of this too, if you put enough time and effort into solving the problem and misunderstandings. Marriage isn't always about love. Sometimes it's just cold calculation. And sometimes people only after some time in the role of husband and wife realize how dear they are to each other and how much in love with each other. It's not for nothing that they say that from love to hate is one step. So you can take it backwards and just love a person who at first glance seems just hateful." The man shifted his eyes to his wife, perhaps expecting some support. But the woman didn't utter a word, just lowered her eyes and remained silent to everything he said. He looked at his daughter again. Camille pondered over everything her father had said. On the one hand, she hoped that love could indeed appear in the most unexpected ways, and she believed that a person could change a great deal. But on the other hand, she realized that this was very, very rare. She looked up at her father for a few minutes and said indifferently, "Love can appear in a week, in a year, and in 10 years. But how can you live with a man until it appears, especially to be his wife? If he will not respect and appreciate you, if you will be just a servant for him, is it worth to regard such relations as high and sincere? Or is it just a mutual satisfaction of needs, which may not suit one of the parties?" Camille crossed her arms on her chest, making it clear that she was not going to accept her father's position and would stand her ground to the last. Sometimes you can be patient for the good of yourself and others. This conversation is over. I advise you to think about what you can occupy yourself with until love appears. What can you focus your attention on so that you don't have to think about such nonsense? You're just too naive for this cruel adult world. You don't realize how complicated life can be, and how much effort you have to put in to get even the slightest chance of getting a good job. Someday you will realize that everything you do is for the good, and that every decision you made was right and led to positive results. After saying this, Stephen headed for the kitchen, and only the daughter's mother remained in the hallway. They stood in silence. No one started a dialogue. "Do you think so too?" Suddenly, Camille asked her mother. "Of course not, my dear," the woman said, clearly not expecting such a question from her daughter. "But on the other hand, love does come quite unexpectedly. Try to just give the relationship a chance, and maybe you'll do just fine." The mother lowered her eyes, clearly feeling guilty for accepting her husband's position, even though she strongly disagreed with it. "And if love doesn't come, what can you do? Then something will have to be done. In our time with this, all became easier. Now you can just divorce without much trouble and judgment of society, and then you can start building your life completely differently. Mom, you realize that love doesn't matter to this guy. He himself personally said that it doesn't exist, and that the only thing a woman does is stay at home. And if I want to develop, if I want to study or somehow realize myself in life, then what? No one can forbid you anything." "Honey," Emily replied, "you are a completely free person who can decide for herself what to do and how to do it. Do you want to study or work, or just sit at home and enjoy the privacy and silence? And you can also completely change your life at any time to leave that person you don't love. Give up a job you hate, drop out of university in any course, just because you are disappointed in your chosen direction. Remember that you are a completely free person, and no one should limit your life. But sometimes you have to think about the consequences of your decisions. They could be disastrous." The woman lowered her head. "I have to go and clean the table and water the flowers on the second floor." Emily went about her business, and Camille was left standing all alone. What am I going to do? The main question that tormented her to the point of madness. She did not understand how to act, what decision to make in favor of her own happiness and future, or in favor of the happiness and well-being of everyone else. Any decision will affect not only her, but also her surroundings. Therefore, it must be made in a balanced and responsible manner. Meanwhile, John and Christopher, who were on their way home, were also discussing the dinner they had just finished. And what do you think of their daughter?" the man asked his son. "I think she's just another naive girl who doesn't realize how complicated and unfair life can be. She tried to tell me throughout the evening about love, about light, pure feelings, about how important it all is, just some childish babble." The guy rolled his eyes and pointedly poked, making it clear that such behavior does not suit him at all. He wants to see as his wife a girl who will perfectly understand and accept all his aspirations and desires, who will put the maximum amount of effort to maintain home comfort, to be an ideal wife, and remain as beautiful over the years. Moreover, the guy was not even thinking about marriage. In the near future, he was going to develop exclusively in the professional direction. About the need to get married, stated already directly by his father. Christopher knew about the fact that his father, Camille, certainly had a burgeoning business, after which there was a considerable amount of production facilities. He wanted to get them into his ownership and completely remodel them to maximize the profitability of his business. However, he couldn't say it directly, not until the most favorable conditions were present. Similarly, Camille's father did not tell anyone but his wife about his desire to get a part of the business, so as not to make a fuss or alarm anyone with his decision. Both men believed that after family unification, it would be very successful to improve their position and get an opportunity for a new impetus for development and self-realization. After all, it is much more difficult to refuse relatives, especially considering that it is not accepted in society. "But she is still quite small," spoke Christopher, "which means that it will be possible to bring her up completely under your needs and preferences, and as a result you will have a wife, a behavior and character that is completely in line with your preferences. Of course, you will have to spend some time and effort to get an excellent result, but the effort is definitely worth it." "And here you are right," John replied and smiled wryly. "It remains only to understand how to re-educate her and make her a docile wife who will sit at home and wait for me like a faithful dog. I don't want anything else." All these high relationships are definitely not for me. The only thing I want is to develop our company and earn so much that I don't even have to look at the price tags in the stores and immediately buy everything I want." A guy turned to the window, looking at the passing neighborhood. "That's exactly the main job. You will still have time to fall in love. There will be money. There will be love and more than one. Trust my experience. All that's left is to get you married as soon as possible and move on to discussing issues that have to do with our business plan. And then everything will be just fine. And we'll deal with Camille later if she can't be rehabilitated. She won't play such an important role in your life," Christopher said. Then he grinned at how much of a responsibility ordinary girls sometimes took on, who, in fact, had no value at all. An ordinary girl can act like she's more important than everyone around her, as if everyone should reckon with her opinion and respect her every word, but while hard on her not forever. "We'll do the wedding and then do whatever you want. It's a deal." The father looked toward his son. "All right, but if there's a lot of smartassery, I won't be quiet either." Soon it was planned to attend a dinner to which Stephen and his family were invited. The man had already started to think over the concept of the wedding, to consider possible variants of events, to discuss all the issues with his wife. Emily was extremely reluctant to discuss all the moments, realizing that this decision could simply break their daughter's life. But she did not argue with her husband and agreed with everything he suggests and says. This time Camille decided to dress more brightly and defiantly make a full evening makeup and put all her hair in a tight bundle. Her choice fell on a red dress, which immediately caught the eye and attracted a lot of attention. Such an image in no way corresponded to John's idea of an ideal wife who should sit at home and obey her husband. It was with such a bright and defiant style. She wanted to push the guy away from herself by showing her independence, but she didn't know about his family's plan, that she was to be his wife anyway, that her behavior and appearance were unlikely to influence the decision. The dinner was to be at 6 o'clock, but suddenly Christopher called his companion and postponed the meeting for a couple of hours, citing business. In fact, his son was just late after another quick date, which he often went on, and it would be wrong to start dinner without him. After all, the plan was to discuss the future of John July. The evening began exactly the same way as last time. A certain seating of the guests and a competently set table, outfits, and costumes stood out strongly. Only Camille, who looked bright and defiant and definitely attracted a lot of attention. Of course, she had counted on just such an effect. Counted on the disapproval of her potential fiancé's family. But instead, Christopher complimented her. And John simply smiled as he met her with an appraising six-eyed glance over her body. It turns out that the change in style didn't help at all. The guy is attracted not only reserved and quiet girls, but also sexy and lecherous. Moreover, John liked Camille's image much more than at their first meeting. After all, now he saw at least some advantage in making their union. He realized that she had a very interesting style, and that it could be left for going out with her to friends or to public places. Going out together would still be necessary so no one would suspect anything, and he didn't want to be everywhere with a girl who looked more like a nun. It turns out that the girl's actions only fueled the guy's interest and made him more determined, which did not play into her hands. After a while, lively conversations at the table began. The parents were talking among themselves, and the guy and the girl just sat and silently listened to numerous stories and plans for the future, exactly until the talk was about their future and their upcoming marriage. So asked Evelyn, who was John's mother, "When do we plan to play the wedding?" She was clearly happy with this arrangement and wanted to have the celebration as early as possible. But when Camille turns 18, Emily replied, "How can we have a wedding when we have a legal age requirement for each spouse? Our daughter hasn't reached that age yet, so we will have to wait a little for that day." There was complete silence at the table. Everyone understood that the woman was right in her decisions, but certainly no one planned to wait 2 years. The only one who was happy about this was Camille. After all, for such a long period of time, it would be possible to understand without problems whether there was love between them and a chance for its development or not. And then Christopher's voice suddenly sounded. But why put off the wedding ceremony for so long? It's an eternity. There are workarounds for every law, and those are the ones we're going to use. He smiled and looked in the direction of Camille's father. But the only reason to get married early is pregnancy, Emily said, shocked at the thought of her daughter having to become a mom at such an early age. I don't agree. Camille stood up sharply at the table, making it clear that she was not happy with this arrangement. I'm not going to be a mom at 16. I don't want to get pregnant by a guy I don't even know. She felt a tug on her arm to sit up. It was John who had made the decision to make Camille calm down and shut up, so that the situation could be discussed further. I'm not going to become a father at such an early age either. I have a career to think about, not diapers and diapers. After all, Camille's mother and the girl herself breathed a sigh of relief. Camille was genuinely glad that her potential husband at least has an understanding of the situation and realizes that everything in life is not so simple. But right after she thought about it, the guy added, we're just doing a pregnancy certificate. And then we can just and quickly get married and not have to do any baby. And then just as easily go and do a certificate that she had a miscarriage. That's it. That's how we're gonna do it. And we don't have to explain anything to anyone. John said it as calmly as possible, without showing any emotion. But the girl was extremely indignant at what she heard. Of course, such news will spread throughout the neighborhood as quickly as possible, and they will go not the best reputation, which would not be desirable. In addition, it can negatively affect the possibility of enrollment in the university. After all, there is a risk that information about early pregnancy will reach the commission at admission, and in this case, you will have to try by all rights and wrongs to cleanse your honor and dignity. That's not a good option, Camille said. I won't be able to go to university, and my fame would spread at the speed of light. I don't want that to happen. Don't ruin my life and deprive me of opportunities just because of your wishes. The father looked menacingly at his daughter, then with a smile on his face said, she is so fiery often, but she quickly withdraws, he said and looked at his daughter again. Let's not postpone the wedding celebration for long. Let's have it as soon as possible. You won't have to study after you get the certificate, John said confidently. Looking at the girl, all you need is to clean and cook at home and keep yourself in order. You don't need an education for that. Besides, we'll need a real baby soon to strengthen our union. And in that case, you just won't have time for a stupid education that won't be useful in life. You should be reading books on how to take care of a baby, to make a normal mother out of you. He indifferently continued to eat, despite the silence at the table. Everyone was completely shocked by what they heard. It is clear that the wedding was planned and discussed on both sides, but the child's such a development was definitely not part of the plans. Although the guy has long ago decided that in order for the union to be strong and long, in any case will have to become a father, despite the fact that he does not want it. So it will be possible to strengthen the union between families and reduce the likelihood of disagreements in business. After all, it is simple to divide it and continue to live as before. When taking into account the presence of a grandson or granddaughter will be extremely difficult. Of course, the child was planned not immediately after the wedding, but soon, in order to eliminate all possible risks. This news he previously wanted to discuss with his father to weigh the pros and cons. But as a result, since there was such a situation at the table, he decided to inform everyone about his decision at once. He had thought it over several times, and he was completely sure that it was the most correct in the current situation, and no one would oppose his decision. For the rest of the evening, the atmosphere was as tense as possible. No one dared to start talking about the baby, and Camille remained silent the whole time. Clearly shocked by all that she had heard, she had almost agreed to become John's wife in order to improve her family's situation and solve some financial issues. But to become a mother and to make a child with a man whom she did not like, but even rather disliked, she was not ready. That's why such news shocked her. Camille's parents were also in a stupor. Father, of course, wanted to improve his welfare and get the opportunity to manage part of the business, but not to become a grandfather. And Emily thought only about the fact that after the birth of the child, her daughter would have minimal opportunities to develop and study. It would be harder to find a decent man and go back to the life she had before marriage. Despite the fact that the dinner was intended to discuss a future wedding, the matter was never resolved. It was soon decided to split up and discuss things a little later, in a couple of days. No sooner had Camille entered her room on her return home than she heard her mother's exclamation of displeasure. It was addressed to her father. "What child? She's a child. You realize she can't drop everything and just give birth to a baby, to a strange guy, so we can live in peace. I can't forgive myself for that." The woman was clearly angry at the situation and did not understand what to do, how to influence her husband and his decision to play a wedding that would ruin the life of their common daughter. "I didn't know about any children," Stephen replied. "In fact, I'm just as outraged as you are. I'll make up my mind. There will be no child. This is just out of line. You should be thinking about work, not about how to make babies as fast as possible." And he seemed like such a reasonable guy to me. The man sighed, and then he spoke. "We'll meet again in a couple of days and discuss everything. I'm sure that everything will be decided in our favor, and no children will be out of the question in the next few years. It's just absurd." After the last sentence, Camille closed the door. Anxiously, she exhaled. She was glad that at least in this matter her parents were completely on her side. It turns out that no one will force her to give birth to a child. And in any case, she will enter the university regardless of whether her future husband wants it or not. She is not going to give up her dream, and therefore will definitely put the maximum amount of effort to stand on her own and achieve her goals. But now, the main thing is to solve the issue of the wedding as soon as possible, so that it is possible to get a divorce as soon as possible in the future. Yes, the girl did not plan to fall in love with a young man and try to change him unto herself. She just wanted to improve the state of her family, to give her father the opportunity to restore the former business, after which she will be able to leave the guy with peace of mind and start living in her own pleasure. For that reason alone, she didn't try to find options to postpone the celebration. She just wanted to do everything with minimal damage to herself, so as not to harm her future and stay with a good reputation. A few days later, it was decided to reconvene with the families to revisit the issue of discussing the wedding ceremony. The first to put forward a proposal was John's father. "Regarding the date of the wedding, I suggest we organize everything next month. There will be a free window of time to prepare for everything and have the best ceremony possible. I think that we should not be in a hurry, so that our children will remember this day for a lifetime, so that there will be no unpleasant rumors, and certainly not a bad reputation about families." Christopher looked carefully at his wife, who agreed, nodding at everything that was said. The woman in general was not much of a talker. In meetings, she rarely voiced her opinion, and always simply agreed with what her husband said. One would have thought that she simply had no say in the family. Actually, that's what Camille thought, and was worried that after the wedding, she would also have to sit silently and just nod. "I think it's too late," the boy muttered. "We can have everything fully organized in just a couple of weeks. I don't see any point in delaying the celebration. All the more so, everyone realizes that the wedding is for business purposes only, so there is no point in waiting for love and affection to appear. They can appear in a year or two, and we just don't have that much time. Besides, when we start together, it will be much easier to get used to each other, and therefore the relationship will develop much better and faster." The guy looked in the direction of Camille, who was clearly loaded with numerous thoughts. "I think it's too fast," Emily replied. "We just can't get ready for the wedding in such a short period of time. Not only do we have to find dresses and various attributes, but we have to coordinate everything. She did not have time to finish because Camille intervened in the conversation and said confidently, "We can do everything in a couple of weeks. That's why I agree with John. We should do it as soon as possible. Otherwise, it could take a long time. We don't want to put off the preparations. Let's start making the guest list now. And tomorrow we will prepare for the ceremony itself, decide all the organizational issues and so on." To say that everyone was surprised by the girl's answer is an understatement. No one expected such behavior from Camille, who just a couple of days ago completely rejected the idea of marriage until the age of 18, so as not to spoil her reputation. And now she agrees to any conditions, so also takes the initiative to spend everything in the minimum time. John was pleased with such behavior on the part of the girl. He thought about the fact that she began to change under his influence, that she accepted her position, and now will constantly agree with him. He didn't even think about the fact that she could pursue her own goals and aspirations, that she could do it all just based on her own interest and preferences. But all in all, it didn't matter much to him. The main thing is to quickly organize the wedding, and then begin the process of her upbringing under himself. John did not even doubt that he could without much trouble to break and completely change the girl's behavior to suit his needs. Preparations for the wedding took place as quickly as possible. Invitations were sent out, and literally the next day after the ceremony was discussed. And in a few days the room was already being prepared and outfits for the bride and groom were chosen. All the bills were paid by the groom's side, so Camille decided not to deny herself anything. She chose the best outfits, included in the menu very interesting and not cheap items, insisted on decorating the hall with fresh flowers and so on. The girl decided to organize everything as much as possible under her taste, so that this event brought her some joy, albeit fleeting. Despite the huge expenditures, Christopher did not refuse anything in the organization of the celebration and did not show anyone his dissatisfaction with the situation. Camille's parents did not even try to stop her or change her mind about this or that decision. After all, she immediately made it clear that everything will be either the way she wants or nothing. Everything was ready by the day of the registration. The result exceeded all expectations. It seemed that the wedding was planned for months. There was a thorough preparation on all issues, and a considerable amount of time was given to each element of decorative design of the hall and restaurant. Everything was combined and perfectly harmonized. John's side invited a lot of guests. Camille decided to invite a minimum number of people so as not to provoke gossip, although of course they will appear in any case. After all, everyone invited perfectly understood that the wedding will be held only because of the interesting position of the bride. After all, there were no other options for its organization. The celebration was quite noisy and fun. Camille Otreveazia, full on this holiday, in anything did not deny herself and behaved not in the best way, especially considering that according to legend she was pregnant. To suspect that the wedding ceremony was not real, it was as difficult as possible. The only thing that caused some whispers was the kisses of the bride and groom, which were quick and cliffy. It was as if the young people were just uncomfortable kissing each other. But it was all blamed on the bride's shyness and her pregnancy hormones. After the end of the marriage ceremony, the young people went to the apartment that belonged to John and now became their home. It remained only to come to terms with the new situation, settle in a new place, and wait for the improvement of the state of their family, after which Camille will be able to return to normal life. But everything turned out to be not as simple as she wanted. Soon after the wedding ceremony, the girl learned that Christopher refused to formalize her father's vow. Consequently, the opportunity to become a manager Stephen simply did not have. However, another development was proposed. It was decided that the man would be hired as a manager to oversee work processes, but only on the condition that a general power of attorney was granted for his business in the name of John's father. This was necessary in order to begin restoring the facility and refurbishing it in a different direction. This was the only way to get production back up and running. Another nuance was that once the company was rebuilt, Stephen Christopher would be entitled to a portion of the income that would go to him for the rest of the company's life. The arrangement turned out to be completely different from what the girl's family expected, and therefore had to urgently think about what to do and how to act to give her father the opportunity to rehabilitate. After a few days, Camille still made a difficult decision for herself. She is staying with John until her father is able to continue running his business on his own. Yes, he will have to give a portion of the profits to Christopher, but he will also be able to provide for himself and his mother. And that's the whole point of this plan. All that's left is to wait for this change to happen. Immediately after the wedding, the guy began to make efforts to bend the girl under himself and change her character and behavior. But Camille was not going to give up so easily and turn into a doll, which could be easily controlled at the slightest desire. She continued to show her character and that she was not going to obey anyone and change for anyone. In this way, several months passed. Quarrels were in the Yum family all the time. The guy and the girl just did not find common ground because they had completely different goals in life, different views on the proper position of the family, the duties of men and women, the rights of me, rights and opportunities, but no one talked about divorce. After all, everyone understood perfectly well that the set goals have not yet been achieved, and therefore divorce was not an option. Moreover, John was still completely sure that Camille was not going anywhere from him now, just like her family. That she will fully fulfill all the wishes of the guy, will obey him, and in the end, will become an ideal wife in his understanding. The girl successfully passed all school exams and received a certificate. Without hesitation, she went to the university and applied for admission in the direction of a chef. She realized that her independent decision could be the cause of another quarrel with her newly married husband. But that was of little concern to her. Camille thought only about her own future and well-being, completely disregarding all the guy's past statements about education, girls, and their jobs. She understood perfectly well that she just needed to get a higher education so that in the future she wouldn't have to worry about finding a job that would allow her to fully satisfy all her natural needs. Camille returned home in a great mood. After submitting her documents, she met a friend and spent a few hours with her in a cafe. This arrangement did not suit her husband, and every time after such situations at home, she was expected another lecture that normal wives sit at home and wait for their husbands from work. They hang out in cafes and parks with their girlfriends all day long. But today she was waiting for another conversation, even more unpleasant and complicated. Immediately after the girl returned home, she saw John, who stood in the hallway with the most displeased expression on his face. "I do not think that your next moralizing will lead to a positive outcome," Camille said from the doorstep, not even listening to the guy. "What you're telling me doesn't matter, because I'm not going to give up my friends. I'm still going to hang out with them. I'm still going to spend time with them. So get used to it, sweetie," the girl muttered. She was about to go into the room when the guy stopped her abruptly, grabbing her arm. The grip was strong enough that Camille even shrieked and tried to pull her hand out, but to no avail. "And we'll talk about your girlfriends later. There are more serious things to talk about right now," John said. Then with a sharp movement, he turned his wife to face him so that she was as close as possible. "I don't remember that I allowed you to apply to the university." The girl was extremely surprised that her newfound husband already knew about it. She hadn't shared this moment with anyone in particular, but most likely his family just had too many acquaintances who liked to discuss everything that just got in the way. The matter of her admission had apparently been discussed as well. Camille thought for a few moments about what exactly to say to the boy. Then she spoke angrily. "No one asked you. I make my own decisions about my life, and I'm certainly not going to discuss them with someone who doesn't respect my opinion. If I said I'm going to go to university, then I'm going to do it, and no amount of excuses will work on me." She gave her hand another tug, but it had no positive effect. The grip didn't loosen. It even seemed to have gotten stronger, so much so that the bone at Camille and surrendered a strange creak. It hurt. "Let me go," the girl said loudly. "The bruise will remain for the whole arm. And if you break it, what will you do? Then maybe you'll become more difficult, since you don't understand Russian." As if the guy hissed through his teeth. Then he added, "I'm telling you for the last time that you will not enter anywhere, and therefore I advise you to come to your senses, or am I gonna make you do it? You're acting like a little kid. You should be thinking about your family instead of your own. You're not just a girl now, you're a wife. You have to fulfill all your duties to the fullest. I'm doing mine. We don't need any money. Neither does your family, whose father is incapable of anything, if he can't provide for his wife on his own. So stop it, and think about your behavior." The guy let go of Camille's hand and headed for the kitchen to finish the coffee he'd left behind. He didn't want her to go to school, to get an education or develop in any way. It was always compared to his mother, who had given up everything and married Christopher, and had never known any need for anything in her life. Her father provided for her completely and covered all her expenses, and so she could live simply for her own pleasure. And the secret of their happiness lies in the fact that Evelyn never argued with her husband and always listened to his opinion. At least, John was sure of that. He made efforts day after day to re-educate Camille and make her like her mother, but it didn't work very well. In turn, Camille was well aware that Evelyn's life was far from the best. After all, she had no opinions of her own. She could not afford to fully socialize with other people, and even leave the house without her husband's permission. A woman always asked permission before buying something or doing something, never allowed her feelings to come out, and seemed disconnected from the world. Such a young, ambitious, and purposeful girl was certainly not going to become. Therefore, all the stories about the happy life of her husband's parents, she simply passed by her ears. Despite the conflict that had just occurred, Camille did not plan to refuse to enter the university. Moreover, she went to prepare for the entrance exams, which were to be held from one day to the next. There was a lot to learn, so she was glad that John would be at work all day, and she would be able to enjoy the quiet and immerse herself in studying. The next few days were particularly noisy and anxious. The couple were constantly squabbling regarding the girl's admission to university. Every night John became more and more aggressive and rude, and even swung at Camille a couple of times, but never touched her. However, this did not help him to achieve the desired result, and his wife successfully passed all the entrance tests. The only thing left to do was to come back in a week and sign the admission papers. And from September, she would start studying in her chosen field. She had no doubt that by the time she returned home, her hubby would already know about her success, so she could enjoy her success and his defeat in his attempts to thwart her enrollment. But this evening, the girl will definitely remember for the rest of her life. After all, it was he who had a huge impact on her future fate. She wasn't even surprised to see John right after she opened the door. The guy looked particularly angry and excited. And in such a situation, the girl's feelings were mixed. On the one hand, she realized that she made her own decisions and was responsible for all the consequences, that she had every right to manage her life on her own. But on the other hand, every time she saw a guy in such a state, she could not even imagine what to expect from him. And that's why every time a feeling of fear came up that she couldn't control her neighbors, she didn't know. And therefore the opportunity to seek help in case of anything she had no. She had to solve all conflict situations on her own and only hope that she would not have to call the police or lie in the hospital after another trial. And this evening, the girl was not just worried. "What the hell are you doing?" From the doorstep, the guy started yelling. Before the girl could even close the door, "I told you that you would stay home and be a model wife. Why the hell did you go to university to take exams? Do you think with your head who'd want you like that? You want to cook? You're welcome. The kitchen is all yours. That's where you belong." The guy grabbed the girl's arm and pulled her into the kitchen, then shoved her in and stood in the aisle. "You're the smartest one there. That's where you belong. And don't you dare cross your husband anywhere else. You make me the laughingstock of my friends. How dare you act like that? Didn't your parents teach you any sense at all? Then I will." The girl didn't have time to get a word in edgewise. She just watched him get angrier and more aggressive with every word he said. She watched his pupils change and his fists clench. This had never happened before. And so she felt an unprecedented fear. She felt that there was a very serious threat to her life, which she would not be able to cope with on her own. The most correct decision she made was just to keep silent and wait for the end of the guy's monologue, after which he should calm down. But that wasn't happening. He waited a few minutes, with all the hatred and anger, looking at his wife, after which he continued to speak in the same aggressive and angry manner. "Why did we stop talking?" Hearing suddenly activated, or brains appeared. "Usually you can't shut up. She speaks her mind. Look at her every time. It's over. Her own opinion, what you'll always do now. Is that what you're supposed to do now? Yes, to behave normally and know your place in the house. So that's how it's always gonna be from now on." The guy grabbed the girl by the arm and dragged her to the opposite side of the house. "Let's go. I'll show you another one of your places where you should be spending your time instead of hanging around parks and universities." He dragged her into the bathroom. Even though her clothes were always clean and laid out, Camille was well aware of the urgency to do something to keep herself safe. There weren't too many options, and so the moment John dragged her past the front door, she just jerked her arm sharply. Then, without looking back, she ran in an unknown direction. She could hear the guy yelling something back at her. But any stop, any confusion could cause very dire consequences. She ran for a few minutes until she realized that no one was running after her, and that she could breathe out and catch her breath. Camille looked around. The place was completely unfamiliar to her. She didn't understand which direction to go to get to any familiar house where she could feel safe. Her phone had been left at home in her purse, which had been successfully placed by the front door. She didn't even think to grab it as she ran out of the house. All thoughts were only about running away as soon as possible to feel completely safe, to get rid of the potential threat. For over an hour, the girl walked around the neighborhood, trying to figure out exactly where she was. During this time, it had gone completely dark, and it became much more difficult to navigate. Soon she was completely exhausted and had no idea what to do in the situation. The only option was to wait until morning, but she couldn't just go to sleep on the bench. That way she could be found without a problem. Husband, when he will get to work in the morning. This option seemed to the girl the most delusional, and therefore it was decided to look for a place where it would be completely safe to spend at least one night, and then decide what to do next. To find a decent option was not possible. Soon there was no strength at all, and therefore had to go down into the cold basement of an abandoned house, which looked absolutely terrible and even dangerous. But there was no choice. In the basement, the girl saw an old mattress, which was shot with something like a light blanket. She was surprised and frightened at the same time. After all, if a full-fledged sleeping place was organized here, it was very likely that at any moment the tenant of these apartments could come, and then the situation could become much worse. But there was no strength to look for a new temporary shelter. So Camille decided to try her luck. Sleeping in the cold basement was not easy. Not only that the temperature around did not allow to fully relax and felt a strong dampness, the girl still could not calm down after everything that had happened and did not understand what she should do next. Her father had not yet had time to fully restore the business. Yes, and the idea with the wedding did not bring the expected result. And to get a part of the company as a gift for such a momentous occasion did not work out. Yes, Christopher had put a lot of effort into remodeling her father's old company and starting a new production facility. But he did it mostly for his own benefit. After all, part of the profit will come to him in any case after all the work processes are set up. So there's no need for marriage. Or is there? And as soon as Camille went to file for divorce, her father would be left with nothing again, and their family would be on the brink of poverty. Anxious thoughts were weighing on the girl and made her feel the heightened anxiety of the experience. She did not understand what decision would be the most correct. Is it worth it to continue to tolerate such an attitude in his address? Or is it time to get rid of the man who brings only negativity into her life? How to apply and where to go after the divorce? Will John not do something to her or her loved ones in the event that she makes such a decision? After all, as time has shown, the guy is completely insane and obsessed solely on himself and ego. It turns out that the decision may provoke him, and then the consequences will be completely unpredictable. And maybe it's just worth going to his parents and try to talk about everything that happened. It's unlikely that his father would approve of this attitude towards women. But on the other hand, it is completely unclear how exactly he influenced his own wife to become so malleable and agreeable to everything. Maybe she wasn't like that. So one should go to her parents and tell them everything. They would definitely be on her side and wouldn't allow her to be treated like this. But her father had married her off to a man she didn't love. Maybe he would just force her to go back to him to continue rebuilding his company. With such quiet thoughts interrupting each other, Camille did not notice how she fell asleep. The sleep was shallow and very disturbing. She woke up literally from every rustle. So when she heard footsteps early in the morning and jumped up, feeling how hard her heart was beating, she expected to see anyone, a man of no fixed abode or her husband, but not her. A little girl of about 5 or 6 years old was slowly descending into the basement. She took her steps as carefully as possible so as not to trip and fall among the debris of old wood and destroyed parts of the house. Suddenly she looked up and saw Camille, who was sitting on the mattress and looking with bated breath at the little girl who was coming downstairs. There was an awkward silence, which was interrupted by the little girl. "Hi, I'm Jenna. Don't you have anywhere else to hang out during the day?" asked the girl and continued downstairs, slowly approaching the girl. To say that the picture shocked Camille was nothing to say. She just didn't know how to react to the appearance of a child in this place. Didn't understand what she was even doing here or how she was being led off by her parents alone. The girl looked tidy enough. It was obvious that she didn't live on the streets. She talked well and was neatly forbidden. Yet she went down into the basement of the abandoned house, completely alone, not scared of a stranger in the place. The girl walked over to Camille and sat down next to her on the mattress. She started to look at the toy she had brought with her, then turned around and pulled out another one, which was lying right behind the mattress. How could Camille not notice a child's toy in such a gloomy place? "Baby, what are you doing here? All alone? Or did you come here with your parents?" the girl asked, staring at Jenna. "No, I came here by myself," she answered. "I come here often during the day to play. Sometimes I even sleep at night." The little girl, without much interest in the conversation, began to play with her toys, while making the characteristic funny noises. She did not look in Camille's direction. Camille looked at the little girl who was sitting next to her. "Aren't you scared to sleep here alone? And why don't you sleep at home? Do you have parents, or are you an orphan?" After the last question, the girl felt that it might sound too harsh and hurt the child. But Jenna's reaction said otherwise. It was scary at first, but now it's not scary anymore. "I'm used to it. Sometimes Rex comes to me at night. He's my dog that my mom lets out when I sleep here. He doesn't scare me at all. And when I sleep alone, I just play before I go to sleep. And then I'm not scared either. Tonight I will sleep here, so I took my favorite toy with me." The girl held out a small doll with blue hair for Camille to look at. "How come Mommy lets you come here alone? Aren't you supposed to sleep at home?" "I can't sleep at home. When Uncle comes to visit," said the girl in a completely calm voice. "When Uncle comes only in the afternoon, I play here, and then I go home in the evening. And then I sleep with my mother. And when my uncle stays with us at night, I can't stay there because he doesn't know about me yet. My mom really wants to marry my uncle, but if he finds out about me, he'll leave, like all uncles used to do. So she and I agreed that she will tell my uncle about me after the wedding. In the meantime, we'll play spies, and I'll hide from my uncle so he won't find out about me before time. And then we'll be fine, and I'll have a daddy. I even like playing like that. I'm helping my mom to be happy." The girl said all this with sincere joy. She believed that her mom would really get married soon and tell about the baby. But Camille had little faith in this. She couldn't believe that such a thing could happen, that a small child could spend the night all alone in an abandoned house, spend almost every day of her life here without going to daycare, and yet her mother reacts calmly to all this. Moreover, she herself sends the girl to this place, knowing perfectly well how dangerous it can be for a child. Camille looked at the girl who was indifferently playing with her dolls for a few more minutes. She was engrossed only in them, and she did not care at all that she was in the basement of an old house, that her mother was abandoning her for a strange man. And at this moment, the girl realized that the only one who really has no choice, who cannot change her life on her own and make balanced and responsible decisions, this is a little girl who involuntarily has to lose her childhood, happy moments, and grow up with serious psychological traumas. And she is an adult and independent person, can change her life without much trouble, can give up everything that does not suit her, and she can also save a little person who does not yet understand the seriousness of her problems and cannot do anything on her own. Do you want to? Stay with me while your mom marries your uncle, and then you'll definitely come back to her. We'll play and watch cartoons together, and we'll buy you a new doll that you won't be afraid to sleep with. Would you like that, Camille?" She hoped for a positive answer and tried to make sure that the girl did not guess anything and just accepted her invitation to live together. Jenna hesitated for a few seconds. Then she nodded her head and gave her hand to Camille. The only thing she mouthed was, "You just need to tell my mom I'll be at your place, so she knows where to pick me up from later when she marries my uncle. And I'll tell her myself." "All right. 'Cause we're in a big hurry right now." "Yes, all right. Just don't forget to tell her not to worry about me. Otherwise she'll worry that I'm gone for so long." The girl sincerely believed that her mother was really worried about her and would definitely take her back after she had settled her own family life. Camille did not believe that and was determined to get custody of the little girl in order to give her a better future. The first thing she did was go to the juvenile detention center. She described the whole situation, except that the girl was sent to the basement by her own mother. Camille simply told about the fact that she met a homeless girl with no papers or anything else, which she did, and said that she was living in the basement of an abandoned house and that she didn't know anything about her parents, only that her mom would take her away after she married some uncle. The story was very convincing. Despite the fact that the girl did not have her own home and stable job, she was promised custody of the girl, but only if she provided all the conditions for the child to live. Camille was warned about inspections and that at any moment she could be deprived of the guardianship status if the child's living arrangements did not meet all the requirements. Little Jenna stayed at the center until the evening, while Camille went to deal with the many problems that had accumulated in her own life. The first thing she did was to pick up her papers from the university. After all, she was going to work to provide for her baby girl, and so there was no opportunity to get a full-fledged education. In the future, if the opportunity arises, she will definitely go to courses in her chosen specialty. But for now, she should think not about herself, but about another little person who could not solve her problems on her own. After that, she went to the registry office and filed an application for the dissolution of the marriage. She refused to be present during the call of her almost ex-husband, and therefore immediately went to her parents to tell about everything that had happened and that soon there would be an addition to their family. Camille was worried that her father might get angry because of the situation. But surprisingly, the conversation was as calm as possible. Moreover, the man supported his daughter in the decisions made and promised to help in the upbringing of the little girl. Emily agreed to study with little Jenna and take her to kindergarten to look after her while her daughter would be at work. Camille was genuinely pleased with this response. Tears even came to her eyes, which she quickly waved away and headed off to pick up the baby girl. By the end of the day, all the paperwork was done. Of course, not without the financial support of the organization. But it was not so important for Camille. The most important thing was that she had made not only an important decision in her life, but also in Jenna's life, who would now grow up in a loving family that would treat her as a relative, not as a thing that could be gotten rid of at any moment. Despite Camille's misgivings, John signed the dissolution of marriage document without a court hearing. He never even once went to her home to address the situation and apologize. After receiving the document dissolving their union, Camille's life became much easier and more peaceful. She realized that now she could do whatever she wanted. She could go home without worrying about her own safety. Of course, her desired education had to be postponed, but that was not the cause of anxiety and worry. A few days after the girl took the documents, she was offered to simply transfer to the correspondence basis, and she gladly agreed. It didn't come true. And so did another of the girl's fears. Christopher continued to work successfully with her father, pretending that there was simply no conflict between his son and Camille. Moreover, John continued to treat Stephen with the same respect and showed due respect as a manager and always considered his opinion. As a result, after only a year, Camille's father's company made money, and therefore he was able to quit Christopher's company and run his own business. Although Stephen had to pay a certain percentage to the Christopher family for the duration of the company's operation, such payments were hardly felt at all. As a result, the family's welfare became much better. And in her third year, Camille was able to switch to full-time study in order not to miss important practice, which is of great importance in her profession. Little Jenna grew up in love and care. At first, the little girl would often ask about when her mom was coming to take her home. How is her relationship with her new uncle? But soon the questioning stopped. Of course, no one ever came for the little girl, and the police did not receive a single missing child report. Most likely, the woman was even glad that she was able to get rid of her daughter, who interfered with her personal happiness. But Camille judged Camille solely from her own perspective. Jenna began to see Camille as her mother. A few times from the guardianship authorities did come with checks, and each time the results were satisfactory. Soon the inspections stopped altogether, and therefore the girl had nothing to remind her that she was growing up as a foster child. This is how life can turn 180 degrees, and a desperate situation can seem like a small thing that can be solved in just one day. And a sudden meeting can not only change a life, but even save it. After all, who knows what could have happened to little Jenna if she had continued to live in the basement of a dilapidated old house.